Kia ora tātou, nau mai haere mai, and welcome to our second session Committee of Council, 25th of May 2021. I'm Mayor Grant Smith, and welcome to members of the public that are here. Just to explain the health and safety features of here, in the unlikely event of an emergency, our exits are listed, and please follow staff to the assembly area, which is next to the clock tower, Te Marae Ahine, the square. In terms of health and safety, we are a non-smoking facility here. Again, unlikely event of needing a defibrillator. It is located at the front of house on the ground floor. And if there are any incidences, please refer those to the committee administrator. This meeting is being recorded, and we're on the Council's website. The meeting is also live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. With that, if you could please, councillors and submitters, just mention your name as you come forward with the microphone so everybody can hear. And if you please note on submission this afternoon, submission 612 in the agenda should actually, from CLM, should actually read submission 549, and that's from Bridget Cairns. Right, we'll go to our apologies, and we have received an apology from Councillor Vaughan Dennison and Councillor Billy Meehan for lateness. I'll look to move those. And Councillor Karen Naylor. Thank you. Right, we've added Councillor Naylor there, so I'll look to move those, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Right, we will vote, please. And that is passed, 12 votes for, none against. Thank you. Number 2 on our order paper is additional items. I haven't received any, been notified of any. And declarations of interest. Again, I haven't received anything from you, so there is none there. And we have a resolution here of the hearing of the submissions for the proposed long-term plan 2021-31 that the committee resolves to note the procedure for hearing of submissions as described in the procedure sheet. I'll look to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Are there any comments on that? There being none, if you could vote, please. That has passed, 13 votes for and none against. Right, we will now move to our first submitter this afternoon, and that is submission 393 for the Manawatu Chamber of Commerce. Invite CE Amanda Lindsley up. Now, just to explain, Amanda, you're well used to this, but for others in the room, we have the traffic light system there. Each submitter has 10 minutes. It is 7 minutes, goes from green to amber at 7 minutes, then when you're at red you've got 1 minute, so hopefully you'll have leave some time. Everything's been read, by the way, all your submissions have been read, so leave plenty of time for questions because we will be running strictly to time. Kia ora, Amanda, the floor's yours.
Kia ora, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to our submission today. As Mayor Grant Smith said, my name's Amanda Lindsley and I'm the CEO of the Manawatu Chamber of Commerce. Apologies on behalf of our Chair, Blair Alabastos, who's unable to be here today, and just to note that we are a voluntary board operated. So for clarity, the Manawatu Chamber of Commerce is a member-funded independent business organisation representing a significant proportion of the GDP of the city and region. Our submission therefore talks to the business representation from our membership, but we are of course also cognizant of all the interrelated aspects of our communities. In fact, quite a few of our businesses are in the not-for-profit sector as well. We don't have a huge amount to add over and above our submission, which you will have already read, and largely we don't have issue with the LTP. So this, what I'm saying today, won't be elongated particularly, and I'll be happy to answer questions. But there are a couple of points that we did want to amplify, and there are a few points of note as well. So firstly, with respect to the independent auditor's report on PNCC's consultation document and the uncertainty around the Nature Calls project and who will ultimately have responsibility, either on a local or more likely regional council basis following the Three Water reform, we feel it's unfortunate timing through no fault of the local council that council must continue to consult on this during this time, and we have concerns over the cost and time spent in doing this when the project may ultimately be taken out of PNCC's hands. We would like to strengthen our message with regards to PNCC's procurement policy. We understand, and as stated in our submission, that this is under review and is currently an internal staff-only document. We urge Council to favour local business opportunities, as whilst they might not always appear to be the most price competitive, the knock-on effects of doing so are likely to have the biggest economic impact overall for our region. We would like to be informed of the timescale for the consultation and potential implementation of a formal procurement policy for the Council. This also ties in with our comments on private-public partnerships and the need to recognise the significance of private investment, especially whilst the city and region is experiencing significant government-funded infrastructure investment, such as the Te Tauranga NZDF, Regional Ring Road, etc., etc. PNCC must be open for business and ensure it's a flexible council to deal with investors, developers, builders and land agents. We understand that from time to time the lack of qualified staff in certain departments may exacerbate the issues. MCO's Mandatory Chamber of Commerce support the establishment of the Central Business Improvement District, Palmy Bid. We see that this organisation could be a great mechanism for Council to engage more with the CBD businesses to resolve issues specific to the CBD, and especially with regards to urban design that is up for review and the Streets for People. MCOC will help support Palmy Bid in its establishment, as we believe that now that this has been elected in by the majority of voters, that this is the right thing to do for the city. But of note, this is not a role that MCOC can undertake exclusively, as we are funded independently by a membership regionally. And whilst many of our members may be within the Palmerston North CBD, and we're happy to support them and their causes, that Palmy Bid is for all CBD businesses who will all have contributed to the collective outcomes, including attracting more customers, resolving parking and streetscaping issues, crime prevention and safety for customers and staff within the CBD. The Chamber's mandate is much wider than that of Palmy Bid, although of course, as Council know, we have a strong advocacy voice right across the city and wider region on many key aspects from both a local and national level. MCOC support the strategic direction of the Council's climate change plan and reiterate that we would like to see some leadership in this space in terms of best practice guidelines, information sheets, etc., to advise businesses of ways in which they can make a difference to us becoming an eco-city, such as how to reduce their carbon emissions, investing in sustainable building design and green building. Whilst we didn't comment on the local alcohol policy in our submission, but had submitted previously at the time of the first consultation, we are taking this opportunity now with regards to the closing time of our bars being reduced to 2 a.m. If we believe that this would solve the problem of alcohol-related harm, then there would be no argument. But we have concerns that the problem is only going to be made worse with young people preloading earlier and being far from ready to call it a night at 2 a.m. Would you have been? So we would like to have another think on that, because the party's going to go somewhere else. And we've talked to a lot of young people. We have our young chamber, and we've interviewed people in this space, and this is a serious concern for us. There is a lot going on in Palmerston North, and we support the small city benefit, big city ambition vision. But we're also mindful of the key inhibitors to business growth, including lack of skilled and unskilled workers, the implications of the reset to the government immigration policy, and the brand of the city. And we encourage PNC to continue to meaningfully consult with all relevant parties and ensure that whilst we grow, that we do not disadvantage our people, specifically in terms of housing, access to health and education. MCOC are delighted that Palmerston City Council has resolved to establish a Murray Award Awards for the 2022-2025 local government elections. Great gains can be made when we all work together. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you, Amanda. A few questions. Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Amanda, for a detailed but concise submission. Regarding climate change plan, do you think, through your members, do you think the council is needing to do some more work, or the members are not informed what the council is already doing?
The latter. I heard that you speak, and we had the evening session in the library not so long ago, and I think really it is just it's clarifying things, because business owners, they're really busy, and whilst they most of the time they want to do the right thing, most of them want to do the right thing. If we can help them do the right thing and make things easier for them in that space, then we would really endorse that. And we can be the conduit for passing that information. And there is information on your website, I appreciate that. But having something that's a little bit more easy to get out to people, or maybe a key focal point that we can work on one thing at a time, so things like that, so that we've just got it, everyone's got it on their agenda. It is really key, and a lot of the chambers around the country, we actually had, before COVID, we had climate change. It was going to be the year's focal point for chambers around the country, and we were looking at sort of people doing flight payback and all sorts of things. There were different ways that different chambers were looking to be able to make a difference, so it's something that we're really keen to pick up on. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Well, one of my questions has just been answered, so that's good. My other question, thank you, Amanda, for your submission. My question's also around point 12 on the climate change, where you say that the Chamber of Commerce are keen to support initiatives around providing leadership in the climate change space to business. Can you just elaborate a bit on what you meant by that? Is it more being a conduit between council and business?
I think it is more being a conduit between council and business, and just be able to pass those messages on. But likewise, if we're able to bring anything to the table as well from the other chambers around the country or other initiatives, and we're happy. We'd like to be around that table with you in those aspects.
Because I think there might be, certainly that is the message that has come, not just from you, but from other people, that there might be space for us to do more in the sort of education space.
Yeah, I think so, because again, sort of looking at the meeting that we had in the library and the different organisations that are around the table, I think we were all saying a very similar thing, and we do talk to each other as well. There is a genuine willingness to work together. And at the end of the day, the business community, we actually are all people. We're made up of families, and so there's no difference. But it's just looking at different ways within those communities that we can actually do something.
But you really need the initiative to come from council.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Hapata.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Amanda. Great submission. Just at one point was point 13, where you talk about the continued redevelopment of the CET. Could you just talk about wanting to support the new grandstand roof coverage in the playing fields at the rear of Arena?
We're just really keen to see that the work progresses in that space around the arena, and because it just adds to the vibrancy of the city so much. And if there are things that can be done, even if it is with sort of a private public partnership, then we're really keen to see that not be put to one side. Let's keep going on that.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Amanda. Just around the procurement policy, would it be fair to say that the members of the Chamber of Commerce's expectation is that policy would be a public document?
Yes.
Thank you.
Why wouldn't it be?
Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Amanda. You've I was going to ask about public-private partnerships, and you mentioned the arena. Was there anything else you had in mind that would be a good project for a public-private partnership?
Not specifically, but there's always things that are happening, new developments that are happening, and let's just bear in mind that that is another vehicle that could be used for development that could not necessarily come out of the council's pocket.
Thank you.
I'd just like to have it considered when things come up that it is in that space.
Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. That's our time. Thank you for your submission, and it will be debated along with all our other 700 plus submissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
All right, councillors, we move now to our second submitter, Russell Hallam, and that's submission 415. Welcome, Russell. It is or it isn't, councillor?
It depends if it's an individual one or from an organisation.
Russell, who are you speaking on behalf of?
Okay, I can speak. They're personal ones, although I will probably acknowledge some support of other organisations.
Thank you.
Kia ora, ngā mihi mai ki a koutou, ka Russell Hallam taka wengawa, no papa o ia pamas no ka taku kāinga ranainei. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm referring to your paper as far as I know, the first submission of 415 number 1. And basically, for the submission, probably I need to have a bit of your forbearance, because this is a submission that is asking you to be supportive, rather than I'm not sure you have the total control to be able to bring this about. But the submission is around extending the current concession for free travel on city buses for gold card holders from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on weekdays out to 24/7. And as I said, this calls for the Palmerston North City Council to be a supporting body to Horizons Regional Council for the older sector of our community. This submission is also supported by Grey Power Manawatu. The Palmerston North City community would all benefit from this concession, with no restrictive time for seniors to do business in Palmerston North City and suburban environs, enabling those seniors who participate in volunteer work and services to do so without the time restrictions currently in place. Seniors who have home care and services in the mornings to be able to participate in community activities throughout the day and the weekends. Seniors who attend appointments and other business to partake in other facilities and activities within our city, such as the opportunity when we come to town to possibly be able to have share the businesses with lunches, just a lunch with friends, etc., without rushing. There's a time for us to visit the library if we're in town to do other business. There is time for us maybe to do a bit of shopping, even if it's window shopping, but it's a time for us to do that. It's a time for us to visit Te Manawa. It's a time for us to enjoy the facilities on Te Marae o Hine. And it's a time for us maybe have a lunch or do our business and go to movies, all without the restrictions of having to, within the time frames of 9 till 4. I've got 3 submissions here that I'm just going to move straight through. So that's that one, and hopefully that you will be supportive. What we're asking for is you to support the Horizons and the submission that's already gone to Horizons on this effect. We would like the Palmerston North City Council, I would like, to support that through the processes. The second submission I have is 4152, which is calling for a ceiling of 25% of household income as rent for social housing tenants from Palmerston North City Council housing stock. This is also supported by Grey Power Manawatu in support of other submissions, I understand. This really is to put into place policy that maximises the rental charge for council rental housing to be no more than 25% of a renter's income. This means, and it has a meaning of policy change process would need to be put into place for any change to this policy to happen. So it's putting it in concrete in policy. This ensures certainty then for the renter, many of whom are of our older community, of their ongoing expenses for housing. It also gives certainty for Palmerston North City Council on the income budget for and from council housing. And I have to say this would be a council providing affordable social housing for its residents. The third submission I have is also one that is in support of further submissions, is calling for Palmerston North City Council to establish a seniors reference group to be the official voice for liaison between council and our community's seniors. And very quickly on this one, we call for a reference group to be established for Palmerston North City Council to refer to and consult through the planning processes and developing policy and implementing such. A reference group to receive information for the sector and also to disseminate information to the sector. I'm going to leave that there because I know there's going to be other speakers on this. I think maybe I'll leave it there because you may have questions and it's easier to do it that way. So thank you.
Thank you, Russell. A couple of questions. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Russell, for your submissions. All very valuable. I'm just going to focus on the Seniors Reference Group one. So we already have the Disability Reference Group. Are you familiar with that model?
To a degree.
So
I don't think it's widely... Oh, sorry, I shouldn't comment.
No, you can comment. This is your space. I was just wondering if that type of a model is what you were hoping for. But it depends how familiar you are with that model. So it's basically where we've got people from across that particular sector that meet on a regular basis with a member of staff and then submit to council as required, and there's a sort of an information flow both ways. Is that the sort of thing you're thinking of?
I think that would be on the reins of what I'm thinking of, what we're thinking of. It is the direct conduit between the sector and council, and that would probably be the model that we're thinking of. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Russell. I've got two questions, if you allow me. Number one is regarding that 24-hour free bus service. Although I know a part of this, answer, do you know how much money is involved if we go after this suggestion?
No, I don't, and I don't know whether it's measurable at this stage. Until we have the opportunity to be able to partake in such a concession, then maybe that is. But what I can say is I am sure and positive that our community would benefit by the extra service that would provide for the participation of our senior sector people within the community facilities and business.
Thank you. And second question is about the seniors reference group. I understand if this is accepted, and once the reference groups is established, they can work. Who should be responsible for creating that group for the first time?
I understand that will come up in further submissions, but I think it would be working between the council and the current age-friendly group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Russell. Again, the 3 pages of the submission there, appreciate that, and we will debate those during the deliberations. Thanks. Right, next submitter is the Mayor of the Manawatu District, and welcome Mayor Helen Warboys. Submission 416. Kia ora, Helen, welcome.
Kia ora, and thank you for the opportunity to come today and speak to you. With me, I have our Senior Policy Advisor, Lisa Thomas, who's going to do most of the speaking and answer all the hard questions. But thank you for the opportunity to be here. We're largely in support of the city's draft 10-year plan, but given that we do share a common boundary, there are some specific matters within that 10-year plan that are obviously of interest to our council and our wider community. And so that's why we've chosen those topics in our written submission, and Lisa's just going to highlight some of the key points from those.
Okay, thank you, Helen. The submission is really just to add to the matters we raised. There's a few things that have moved on and a bit of additional information that we wanted to provide. So firstly, in regards to carbon emissions, we have supported the city's goal to reduce carbon emissions. Our council is also embarking on developing an environmental strategy at the moment. So we are interested to see the types of actions that your council puts in place and to learn from your successes. In relation to climate change, we're just seeking some clarity about messaging. So we just identified some potential inconsistencies in relation to drought risk. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. With regards to the shared pathway, construction's well underway with the Fielding to Palmerston North shared pathway. And speaking with our roading manager, we think we'll be all done in about 12 months' time. So we've got about 2 k's of pathway and 1 footbridge to go till we've finished our link through to Nanestead line. So just keen to see the city link through to that point as well, so that it will be usable for our communities and people wanting to travel by walking or cycling between Palmerston North and Fielding. With regards to road safety improvements on Calvin Grove Road, we submitted in support of the safety improvements that are included in the draft 10-year plan. This road is important for access to our Hiwanui community and is a key area of focus in the Hiwanui Community Committee's community plan. They're very interested in improving road safety. We support the work that Palmerston North is already doing with Manawatu to improve road safety at T intersections on Calvin Grove Road and access ways to Hiwanui School. The vertical realignment and widening of the 5 dips on Calvin Grove Road sits outside of MDC's jurisdiction, but we've supported the Hiwanui community in their previous submissions to Palmerston North City to improve road safety on this route. And once the Manawatu-Tararua Highway is completed, we expect traffic to increase on Calvin Grove Road. So we want to offer our support to Palmerston North City in lobbying Waka Kotahi to raise the priority of this project. In relation to the Kiwi Rail Freight Hub and Freight Ring Road, our submission requested that Palmerston North actively involve Manawatu in discussions with other key stakeholders in relation to transportation decisions on the Kiwi Rail Freight Hub, Regional Freight Ring Road and extension to the Palmerston North Airport. And we're aware that these projects have now been brought together as a Central New Zealand Distribution Hub project. Given that these projects are all interlinked, we agree that it makes sense to combine them to reduce confusion and improve communication with our affected communities. Manawatu District Council has agreed to the proposed governance and management structure of the Distribution Hub project that is included in the draft Distribution Hub strategy by CEDA and Palmerston North City Council. We look forward to working together with Palmerston North and other key stakeholders through the reference group and steering group for the Distribution Hub strategy. We also hope that our involvement will help to identify other opportunities for mutual benefit, such as in improving linkages between Fielding's Kawakawa industrial area and the North East industrial zone. And lastly, the Southern Grandstand. MDC has submitted in support of the proposed development of the Southern Grandstand at the Central Energy Trust Arena, subject to Palmerston North City Council securing the necessary external funding. Any improvements that make this facility more attractive for securing future events mean that more people will come to our region and spend in our region, which can only be a good thing. I now welcome any questions.
Thank you. Yes, we have Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks Lisa and Mayor Helen for being here. Just wanted to pick up on that point around the discussions with QRail, et cetera, around the transport planning. The request as it's written there is around actively involve MDC. So can you sort of tell us what the baseline is? What are we working from today?
That's right. So since we put our written submission in, some work has been done on that, and there now is a proposed governance and management structure being put in place that's been highlighted through the CEDA document, the Central New Zealand Distribution Hub. And it's just recognising that each of these projects, while they are individual projects and have their own processes to go through, there is now an opportunity, because we all understand that they all connect and benefit the region, that at this point it makes sense to have some sort of structure where we can communicate the progress both to our community and those involved as one big project rather than individually. And, you know, up until now, you've obviously heard the confusion like we have about this project says this and this project says that. So this is an opportunity to come together and have a common voice.
Thank you. So can I take from that reply that your concerns as outlined in the written submission are addressed at this stage?
We've made progress towards that. That's what we're proposing to set up.
Right. Thank you.
Also, just from myself, and it probably dovetails into what Councillor Barrett was saying, the Palmerston North Fielding pathway, and certainly through to Bunnythorpe, has some time limits to it because of the proposed work with the Kiwi Rail Hub and Ring Road, and it would seem pointless to construct something that may not end up being where it is meant to be. So that probably has some time constraints around it, which are not of our doing. But we understand that you sound like you'll be finished in about a year's time, which is great. Are you aware of the city's you said you wanted to learn a little bit more around our sustainability projects. Are you aware of we've published an annual report on that?
Yes, we have, but we're only just starting to delve into that ourselves. So what we're signalling is that we're keen to learn off the work that you've already done, and potentially there may be opportunities to work together as well.
Yeah, certainly around data collection, and that has been a bit of a bone of contention too, of which set of data are we using, and making sure that all TAs actually around New Zealand have one source really. Well, that's no further questions. So thank you, Mayor Helen. Thank you, Lisa, for your presentation. Appreciate you taking the effort to come and speak to it. And again, we will take that submission in to the debate. Thank you. All right, councillors, we'll jump through to the Palmerston North Youth Council. Submission number 508. And welcome.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah. We've got the presentation on. Yeah. Okay. That's good.
It's just coming up.
Kia ora, good afternoon. I'm Cara.
I'm Nick.
From the Palmerston North Youth Council. We made a submission to the long-term plan with a focus on Goal 1, specifically on youth perspective on transport. Goal 3, with a focus on community facilities and safe communities. Goal 4, as a whole, with youth voice prioritised in sustainability and climate change. And Goal 5, surrounding the youth voice and active citizenship in Palmerston North. From the time of our submission, we have gone back to the youth and gathered their view on our points, and would like to present them in support of what we have currently submitted. Through the Youth Council's presence on social media, we have asked youth for their opinions on the areas we decided to focus on within the individual goals. The use of social media is so valuable in communicating with youth and vital in making council matters more accessible to everybody, especially our young people, and we'd like to present those thoughts to you today.
So we decided to focus on the strategic transport section of Goal 1 because youth uses the sidewalks and cycleways all the time on their way to and from school. As we stated in our submission, we agree with your message, with your measures for success, but we want more of a focus on making biking and walking safer around the city. This involves adding more bike lanes and pedestrian crossings around schools and on main roads. We also conducted some crew testing to see how many people bike to school by counting the number of bikes in the bike storage of Boys High and Girls High. We discovered that only around 2% of students bike to school. In our opinion, this is appalling. We live in the Manawatu Plains, keyword plains. Biking should be the first option for transport around the city, but according to our data, the majority of students don't think it's a good idea. We think that this is because it doesn't seem safe enough. The data that we've gathered here from Instagram further proves this point. The youth wants the roads to be safer for biking and walking. Um, 77 out of 55 responses said that they do not feel safe in City Central at night. This directly corresponds with our questions about Goal 1. Well, a question about Goal 1, asking if youth would walk or bike more if it felt safer. And City Central plays a key role in that. In our submission, we discussed issues that youth have with the City Central and the bus terminal at night, and we would like to see an in-council to response to that.
We then asked youth, should the council fix the old pipes or build new ones? This was our closest yes-no split so far, 20 out of 51 saying upgrade. This was a confusing result for us, as we, as the Youth Council, fully understand the discussion around the new pipes and couldn't understand why a question like this could be so close. This result made it clear to us how other youth outside of council have very little knowledge of council matters, even around issues that will affect them now and in the long term. This discussion around new infrastructure is so important and impacts everyone long term. If information around it was more engaging and digestible, this poll might show very different results. Cool. We asked the youth who should have a say when it comes to climate change, only those who can vote or everyone, especially youth. An overwhelming 90% said everyone should have a say in climate change, with a focus on those whose futures rely on action now. Both in the forming of plans surrounding climate change and throughout the execution of those plans, youth play a vital role.
The climate change plan, it appears to lack action. As we said in our submission, there appears to be loads of plans to make plans and not so many plans for tangible action. We acknowledge that a lot of the detail on tangible actions are integrated with other plans such as the transport plan and the waters plan, but we believe that there is so much room for improvement here. We also notice that currently in the waters plan, the council seems to be reacting to the effects of climate change instead of being proactive in helping prevent climate change in the first place. So, given that the youth really wanted to have a voice about climate change, we decided to see what they had to say. Here are the main themes from our responses. Apply pressure locally to invest in local sustainable solutions, such as providing an incentive for sustainable packaging and making it more economic to have solar panels on the roof. Engage in local efforts to reduce carbon emissions and to advocate at a national level to incentivize sustainable solutions, such as getting rid of tax for electric vehicles. But overall, the majority of responses were about how we need tangible action now and that it isn't being taken seriously enough currently. We already know that it's happening and what's causing it, but we need to focus on preventing it, not monitoring it. We fully understand the limits on council's actions to a big of an issue such as climate change. However, we think these submissions from youth are achievable within council's abilities.
The youth voice is perhaps one of the most untapped resources that, if properly employed in a project like the long-term plan, has the potential to be of great influence. The youth are willing and passionate about the issues that relate to them and their future, and one of the main restrictions to participation in these issues is the fear that youth did not have a place in local government and council matters. The youth will always have a place here, they just have to know that. Local government and council matters can feel very inaccessible and exclusive to what the youth are familiar with, and to make progress with active citizenship, this roadblock must be worked upon. 91% of our responses to our poll stated that if they had more access to information about what council does and how it impacts them, they would get involved. There's a lot of importance in that does and impacts you. The youth aren't interested and engaged groups. They are just missing that connection of knowing what council is and how your actions affect them and their lives. If the council aims to best represent us, they need to make politics and council matters more accessible through gateways for us to communicate and understand council matters. Cool. And we'd love to take questions on both the data that we've collected and our submission. Thanks.
Great, thanks Cara, thanks Nick. Fantastic, really good stuff. Number of questions, so we'll, oh gosh, I've opened it all up. Okay, the Deputy Mayor, start there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Cara and Nick. I've got a few questions, but it sounds like so do others. So I'll just go to one question for now. Just on this slide here and your comments about, I guess, opportunities to be involved. Obviously, we have this process where we go out for submissions and seek your feedback along with anyone else who wants to participate in that process. I guess I'm wondering, do you feel that there is an opportunity, or there should be an opportunity for you to participate sooner as a representative voice of young people? Are you wanting to feed into processes sooner than just our public submission process, or where were you sort of going with those comments around more opportunity?
I feel like definitely representation is a huge aspect, and as the Youth Council we have that role in representation, but also in consultation. I think engaging in that youth voice in that space is key, because representation is great when you hear it from a few select voices, but if you think of Palmerston North, this untapped resource, right? A city of youth. So speaking to them both throughout the processes I think is key, yeah.
Okay, so it's more around our engagement with young people in the community through our submission process.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And just them understanding and having the knowledge, and this information being accessible and engaging for youth. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Nick and Cara, for coming in. Just specifically, you talked about the bus terminal safety issues, and other than, so are you talking about the intercity terminal, or you're talking about the one on Main Street?
Yep, the Main Street terminal. Yeah.
Okay, so other than lighting, are there any other contributing issues to that?
I think there's definitely is a huge area to cover, but lighting was honestly such a simple solution that we could find, because when we tackle something like feeling safe in city central, lighting, honestly, to youth is probably a big role in that. There are definitely other ones, but if we're looking for a place to start, I think that's a place to start.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. I have two questions again. Can I ask you the range of ages of your membership?
Cool. So the Youth Council goes
Yes.
from age 14 to 24. So we have both representatives from high schools and from Massey University.
So obviously, many of your members have a voting right.
Yes, a few members, yeah.
And during your surveys, did you ask the question, how many of those voted last time?
No, we didn't. But in the, we got a couple of responses in our Google form, and one of them was younger than 18, and one of them was older than 24. That sort of, but we didn't ask in the Instagram polls.
Okay, all right. And I can see that the total number of respondents are different in different questions or surveys. Was it because of you did it on different times, or some people or some members didn't bother to answer certain questions?
I think the fluctuation between different questions is actually really interesting to see what areas youth particularly engage in, what gets them egged up, what they want to respond to. So I think if we flick through them, they're actually really interesting. And even to see even the slight decline as we did them in order of the goals, and even to see the slight decline as the goals go on, just to see how we can engage them and what formats are most engaging to them. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McAleod.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, guys, for such a wonderful report. My question was just around governance and civic engagement as well. And you've highlighted some opportunities that we can, the council can help with in terms of getting more young people involved. And my question was around opportunities to get involved in the political process, especially engaging young people in that. And how can we help you guys in doing that? And what are the sort of opportunities that we can create to facilitate that? And because one question might be, should we start rethinking what engagement means? Does it mean just voting, submitting, that sort of thing? Can you probably provide more highlight in that?
I think a good start with that is to go to schools and just talk to the school about what role the council has in things, because that's a lot of the big gap that there is there, that the schools don't know exactly what you guys do and how that they can effectively have a say.
I think the incentive from you is an incredible place to start. If the council is actively looking to seek out engagement from youth, that is so incredibly key, and that's where it's going to start, because we want to hear and we want to know and we want to be engaged. And I think just understanding that we have a role here and that our voice plays a key role is all that we need to know. Thank you.
Could I just ask one question around climate change? You talked about plans, talking about plans, and that there were some programs that youth had identified that could be actioned now. Could you elaborate on that?
I think, especially as we looked through, there was a specific climate change document that we had to look through, and unfortunately, in the green section that describes the plans we're going to take, it was a lot of monitoring and planning and steps like that. Whereas we think,
so we think that there should be a huge focus on the doing of things, not so much on the planning of and that sort of stuff. Because we need to, because we already know that climate change is having a negative effect, and that we need to, that the future isn't going to look too good if we don't start action now. So,
When we discuss especially the wastewaters plan and the conversations around the river, I think it's very important to view the council's role not only as a reactive, we're not just reacting to climate change, we're not dealing with the consequences, we are also a preventative measure. So when we discuss this river and when we discuss this, we are also somebody who can make a positive impact before these things happen.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for your submission, really well thought out. And again, like the others, it'll go into the debate later on. We appreciate you taking the time to speak to it. Thank you. All right, we move now to submission 506, the Housing Advice Centre, and welcome Sally Babbage.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr Mayor and councillors. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. It's sort of like an annual outing, and it's really nice to have this opportunity to interact with democracy, which I'm becoming to believe more and more in as I get older. The Housing Advice Centre really supports the direction that as a council you have outlined for housing. As we said in our submission, that we really are very supportive of a lot of the things that you want to do. However, we strongly urge you to put the maintenance, the funding, the maintenance of your own social housing on the agenda and to fund it properly. That's to ensure that your tenants have warm, dry, suitable housing going into the future. It's to stop a budget blowout later on in coming years as that housing stock gets older and hasn't been maintained. And it's also to protect you from tenants being able to take you to the tenancy tribunal for that lack of maintenance. So I strongly, strongly ask you to put that back into your funding stream. Housing is still a really strong issue in our community. We have far too many people who are either not housed or extremely inadequately housed. I feel like every time I come here I say, oh, I'm seeing more people in cars. I am. I'm seeing more people in cars. I'm seeing people back in sheds and garages and crap and caravans and, tents and places. So keeping sight of that issue and the work that you are doing around district plans and subdivisions and all of that is wonderful, and it was really heartening to see the Housing Forum not so long ago and to hear those discussions with developers and with government agencies and things to try and push that forward. But I would request strongly of you that you do not take your eye off this, because it's not going to go away. And the downside for our community of so many people not being adequately housed is just huge. It's not actually in our submission, but it's something that's really raised its head recently, and that is maybe the time has come for the council to lead an investigation into some form of temporary overnight accommodation. We have people that are extremely difficult to house, but who do not deserve to sleep on the streets. And the time might have come that the numbers are such that we actually have to start thinking about that. I know that you've got my submission, and I'd really like to give you the opportunity to ask me questions rather than me talking at you. So just thank you very much for not taking your eye off the housing, and I'm really happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you, Sally, and thank you for your work that you do. I get emails from you, I think, every week, so it's very, housing's very topical for us all. Just two things from me. Around the maintenance, is there something I'm missing here? Is there an active site that you can see we're not maintaining well?
No, there's not. It's just that it was in your document, it said that the funding is not sitting there. And I have certain people on my committee for whom that funding, ensuring that that funding of that maintenance is really important.
I'm not sure that's totally correct, because we do fund it. So maybe we haven't worded that properly.
Okay.
That's fine. I'll leave it. It's something we can take offline. But my understanding is we do fund that maintenance.
Okay. It was something about it not being funded in the future.
And just the other thing around the transitional or the emergency type housing.
Yep.
Are you talking like a city mission type sort of model? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm not talking about transitional or emergency housing in there. That's sort of like being dealt with. What I'm talking about there is our people who we can't even put into emergency or transitional housing. They're on the streets.
Right.
They're in cars. So maybe the time has come to think about some temporary nighttime accommodation.
Night shelter.
Yep. There are other models that don't use, but yeah.
Okay. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Sally. I just wanted to get some more detail around a sentence in your submission where you said, we'd like to see council's criteria for access to its housing not be so reflective of that of MSD, and that as council's criteria has become more like MSD's, these people have been shut out of housing. Can you explain that? I'm not really sure what criteria you're referring to.
Yeah.
Because I don't think our criteria have changed, have they?
Your waiting list, there is certain things. So the criteria that comes, from the 40,000 plus and all of that, that's still in place. But the way that your waiting list is organised, there is a sort of a ranking going on.
Sort of an unofficial, because it's not criteria that we...
No, but I believe it's a policy or something.
Okay.
You'd have to talk to your staff about that. But we have seen it, and it has become really close to the MSD one. And in some ways, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but what we do find is that there's this whole group of people who often really struggle with relationships, to develop relationships with other people. So they might have the money, so the amount of money they have might take them up too high, or whatever, but it's that relationship thing. They can't maintain a relationship. They can't build relationships to get themselves into housing. And that criteria sort of, but the MSD one and your one sort of keeps them out. Or that mainly around the money, and it's what we're sort of saying is that actually maybe sometimes people who do have some money still need that level of extra social support to get into housing. That's very much what's in the back of my mind. It's not huge numbers of people, but they're really difficult people to house.
Okay, thank you for that. Although what you've alluded to is that there might be a secondary set of criteria that are being actioned in an operational way that perhaps aren't in the policy. Is that what you're saying?
That could be well the case. I was under the impression that they were part of policy, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, I think we'll follow that up later. Thank you.
Councillor Dingwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Sally, for coming in today. So I have a question around the safe spaces that you were talking about, acknowledging that there are some people out there who need places to go, who might not necessarily have a home or a safe space. And you talked about places like libraries and museums. Is that enough, or do we need to be looking at a safe space that isn't the library and the museum, and or is that separate to this idea of a night shelter?
Yes, it is separate to the idea of a night shelter. What's in the back of my mind, in our minds there, is that if like you're a family and you are in a really, really crowded house, you need to be able to take your children away from that house, perhaps to have family life that, and for other people, might happen in the house. You know, if you're in a house that's got 9 people and it's only got 2 bedrooms in it, you actually end up having to take your family life away from that house. So that's where these communal spaces like museums and libraries and the art galleries, shopping malls, whatever, they become really important to those families. And it's not just true of families. It might be that you're an older person and the house that you're living in is really cold and damp and you just don't want to spend your days in there. So you are looking for affordable, safe, warm spaces to go and have the life that many people actually live in their own houses. So that's what's sitting behind there. Yeah. So it's an acknowledgement of how important that these spaces that you already provide are. And just a reminder that when you do create them, that at the moment in our community, that is one of the benefits of them. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and nice to see you, Sally. Look, I just want a little bit of clarity just around the idea of emergency accommodation, night shelter, whatever you want to call it. Is in terms of local capacity requirements, could you give an estimate on what that might be?
It would definitely be under 20 and probably under 15, is my guess. I mean, that's the thing, is that we actually don't have any real community-wide based data. We know what comes through our office, but we don't know what doesn't come through our office. So that is a little tricky. What's really prompted this for us is the group of people from whom emergency housing has been removed, the access to that. But having said that, even if we could get that access back for them, there isn't a single emergency provider, probably in the lower North Island, that we could convince to take them anyway. So it's that group of people that we are most concerned about, plus those that have never actually wanted to really engage with MSD or other agencies. Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I just make a clarification point here? So these people are complex, high needs, and all of the traditional doors are closed to these people. Is that correct?
Yes, there are 2 groups of people. That's definitely one. The other is the group that cannot or will not engage with services because of complex needs. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Sally. That's very clear. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Sally. We appreciate you taking the time to speak to your submission, and again, all your comments and your submission will be taken into debate.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll just jump a little bit here to 536, Bruce Wilson. Bruce, welcome. Kia ora, Bruce.
So that I get it in approximately the right order. Good afternoon, Your Worship. Haven't seen you in the mornings lately. Good afternoon, councillors and staff. I want to speak about 3 of the topics that I've mentioned in my written submission so that you'll more fully understand what really matters to me. I'll use the screens to illustrate some of the details, especially if I get the right arrow, we'll be going right. Firstly, I've been cycling in this city regularly for over 50 years. I strongly support the previous comments and the increasing provision of separation of cyclists and pedestrians from motor vehicles so that both groups can go about their normal activities without harming or inconveniencing the others. Many of Council's actions in recent decades have assisted us towards this goal. However, further improvements can easily be achieved by giving attention to details that are frequently overlooked. I specifically focus here on motor vehicle carriageway repairs. Here are coming 3 photos that show Summerhill Drive and Broadway as examples of work that's been done for motorists which compromises cyclist safety. You can see 3 surfaces here to challenge cyclists. Between the nearer white line and the curb is the cycle lane down Summerhill. And you can see there that it runs for 100+ metres to give them lots of time to traverse the peril. We watched an 11-year-old girl come off near the bottom of that, and I am quite sure as a cyclist who goes down there almost every week that the surface changes or what prompted her to part company with the bike and need an ambulance. There's a piece of Broadway. Now, it looks pretty innocuous, but the corrugations, when you've got properly inflated cycle tyres, add a dimension of challenge. Even if there is no wind and no vehicles, you can still come off and get gravel rash. It's a recipe for hazard, which could be avoided by stopping the surplus tar when the road is being resealed, spilling into the cycle lane. Secondly, I want to comment on the maintenance of footpaths. All of us are real or nominal pedestrians when we get out of our cars. We walk. And so this is relevant to all of us. The risks created by action or inaction of staff or contractors should be avoided through better job definition or better supervision so that footpaths are not compromised by human inefficiency. The next 2 photos show examples of footpath situations which should not have occurred or that should have been remedied long ago. Both create dangerous situations for pedestrians. Uneven gravel, broken concrete. There are 2 entrances, 1 subdivider, 1 council, and many, many months. There's a photo that shows that 1/4 of the footpath width is unusable because of grass growing over the concrete. I took my spade so that I could discover where the concrete actually extended to. With a ditch on one side, that's that sort of crease down the left of the grass, and a curb on the other side, there is no room for passing another pedestrian safely. Someone has to chance the ditch or the traffic. In the mowing during May, I'll let you just reflect on that. The mowing during May hasn't removed the grass off the concrete. Thirdly, I support the principle of a particular set of bypass roads for heavy trucks as they enter or leave the city or as they bypass the urban area. The broad shape of such a circuit should have corners close to Ashurst and Bunnythorpe and Longburn and somewhere between Linton and Tokomaru. This fits substantially with the use of State Highways 54, 56, 57 and the probable amendment of State Highway 3. The Council's consultation book, which I brought in case we need to look at it, shows at page 14 and 15 our integrated plan. And that shows that 3/4 of this bypass is already there. It's in a solid black line and it's labelled Regional Freight Ring Road. The sighting of the downstream bridge, which is there hidden under a purple banner, it's to be discussed in future. It's far too fine a detail for today. The primary difficulty that Council's consultation gives me is that the integrated plan also shows 2 broken black lines labelled Regional Freight Ring Road Options. One of these broken lines is the existing Bunnythorpe-Ashurst Road. So the ring road's almost totally there. All it needs is a downstream bridge, which is implicit in a solid line. The second broken black line is from Bunnythorpe to Acowtree. It's a Stony Creek Road plus some new roads and a bridge. This option is an expensive delusion for you and it should be abandoned. I could concede that the Bunnythorpe-Acowtree option had some possible advantages if we already knew that the Paeatua track was or was about to become a state highway. Or perhaps if the replacement for the Manawatu River Gorge Road, now abandoned, had still up in the air and could have still been the south route, south of the river. But it's not, and we know it's north of the river. So the Bunnythorpe-Acowtree section, which is in the plan for about $200 million, would be a cheap part of putting in a state highway from Bunnythorpe to Mangamairi. The bit from Acowtree to Mangamairi would be eye-watering in comparison with that $200 million. But because we know that the Manawatu Gorge is being replaced, the road is being replaced north of the river, Bunnythorpe to Mangamairi is just a game and a secondary route which will stay a secondary route. We've got, most of us anyway, looking around the table, most of us have got more chance of becoming an astronaut than watching that happen. Let's look at the documents to see what I've been able to discover, because I've been really interested in this topic for a long time. First of all, the Regional Council has a transport plan. You're a party to it in a sense, and it's had nothing relevant on their website since the 2018 review. We're ahead of them here. Although the preferred gorge replacement route was known by May 2018, the review in 2018 at their end did not include this, but it did recognise, as you can see, that the preferred route, which we now know, is going to dictate things. So I looked at the city. What's the council position? Well, it's, for me, unclear. We've got 2 options, you see at pages 13 and 14 in the consultation document. The Bunnythorpe-Ashurst portion is likely to become part of State Highway 3, and the region signals that in its transport plan. But while the Bunnythorpe-Acowtree option remains in the documents, the expectation of it becoming a state highway is just an illusion, and yet your assumption, significant forecasting assumption, says we expect it will. I find that very difficult to understand on your behalf. In NZTA, the third party, and they make their position fairly clear, it doesn't deal with specific roads, but it makes a straightforward indication of the priorities, and they don't seem likely to include making Bunnythorpe to Mangamairi a state highway. So I would be happy if councillors, some of you, wanted further explanation beyond today's time allowance. I could provide such an opportunity to help you understand why Bunnythorpe-Acowtree is a silly thing to leave in your 10-year plan henceforth and forevermore. Thanks for hearing me. I'll try the questions.
Thank you, Bruce. I'll open up for any questions. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Bruce. Good to see you here, and Jill. Just wanted to pick up on your points around maintenance. You gave us a number of of very specific examples, and we could find 1,000 more if we wanted to. What, in your view, is the system-level solution to all those specific issues?
This is a matter that councillors have to ask questions about. I can help you think of questions. I've given these as specific examples because I was part of that piece of the city frequently over the last 6, 8, 12, 18 months. But I know by travelling around the city, as you know, that there are lots of other situations. So these are specific examples of general situations. I don't know who does the work, whether it's council, staff or contractors, but the job needs to be cleanly defined so that certain things do or don't happen and they're monitored to see that that's the case. Trimming the grass, for instance, on Summerhill Drive, somebody's got to actually push it back to the concrete and keep it there. There's a concrete cover of some sort halfway down that little reserve where the concrete really butts against the footpath and the grass doesn't overhang at all there. It's possible to keep it under control, but somebody's got to bother and somebody's got to see that they bother. All over town.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bruce. You might as well stay there, and we'll now swap to former Mayor. Welcome, Jill White, and we can swap microphones as well. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, councillors, staff members and members of the public interested enough to come along. It's really good to be here this afternoon and making some of my views to you in relation to this 10-year plan. Now, I'm sorry to start off feeling a bit gloomy, but my first point I do feel gloomy about, and that is the explosion of this non-term called Palmy. I actually find it is a sort of non-word. It is not the name of our city. Now, Palmerston North is perhaps not the most beautiful city name either. It has some dignity, though. It has some history. It could be regarded as a relic of conservation, but it at least is a name. Palmy is a diminutive. It is a bit of a gimmick, in my view. Having said that, if we do want to change the name of this beautiful city of ours, there's a comment in the consultation document in the preface that states that the 150th anniversary is built on strong Rangatane o Manawatu foundation. And I would suggest if we really seriously want to change our name, that we talk to our Rangatane representatives in this city. They have names. I don't want to sort of come forward with a name at the moment because I don't think it's my place to do so. But given that this is the 150th anniversary, we actually know for the Rangatane they've been around a heck of a lot longer than 150 years. So my strong suggestion is, if there is that desire to change the name, and I think there are some good reasons why we should, that we talk to the Rangatane people. Now, one or two other points that I want to make about the consultation document. One is the independent auditor's report. Look, the adverse comment is disturbing. And it seems to me that it was saying to the city, to the council, go back and have another look at what you're putting forward so that we can actually get something that people can really consult about. However, enough of that. Given the rates increase here, which is on page 68 of this particular document, There are a number of different graphs. Then there's also the issue of the debt to revenue ratio. And just one sentence I want to bring out of the latter option, that is page 67. It says, this means the council's debt is forecast to increase from 164 million to 860 million over the next 10 years. Now, this needs more explanation. That is a whacking great increase, and I don't think it's only related to the Three Waters program, but it is sort of an extraordinary increase to my way of thinking. However, moving on, I want to briefly look at the whole climate change thing. And it was really great, I thought, that the youth representation today was talking about climate change. Because, look, I'm 80, so climate change disturbs me. I don't like some of the potential in it, but I'm not going to be the one who has to live with it for the next 80 years. These young people who are here today are going to be the ones who are living with all the downsides of climate change, and so deserve to be taken seriously. One thing that I do want to mention, though, is the question about changing from road transport to rail transport. And I'm really pleased to be here today to hear the Manawatu District Council talking about the Central New Zealand Distribution Hub strategy. Now, I may have missed reading something important, but I don't actually recall anything from the Palmerston North City Council that was sort of along the lines that Manawatu District was talking today. Now, I could be very wrong, but I would really like to know a bit more about that. I certainly, in my submission, do talk about a Central New Zealand distribution rail hub, but I talk about that as being the focus rather than the regional freight ring road hub, which has got quite a lot of mention in the City Council document. I note the work that's going on the railway line between here and Bunnythorpe. I also note the government's recent commitment to rail in their recent budget. At the moment it seemed to be a bit focused on the Dunedin facility for building new rail freight and so on. But with the government interested in rail, that's also the time we should be putting our voice forward about the importance of rail. And having listened to Manawatu District Council today, I think the only thing I can say to you folk is it seemed to me really important that Palmerston North City Council is listening to them as well and talking with them. I don't honestly know where all the rights and wrongs are, but it does seem to me that there is something really important that could be happening here between the two authorities. And a bit of support from central government wouldn't help at all. Sorry, wouldn't hurt at all. Thank you, Bruce. It's very handy to have your sort of your built-in correction system next door to you. Now, I want to briefly look at some of the goals in the 10-year plan. I don't want to sort of go into drastically all of it, but do have a word of caution. There are so many things we do so well here. I'm talking about the health, the defence, the education sectors, all the idea of innovative new strategies, new developments, great. But let's forget what we're good at also. Then about being creative and exciting. Yes, think some really good things are happening here in terms of our diversity, building on our city of culture and languages. This is, I think, a real strength of Palmerston North City. And also being a creative city that cultures and celebrates the arts. But one thing that isn't quite so exciting is sometimes walking on the footpaths here. And the idea of city centre streets for people is great. But I also think it's really important to remember there's a lot of city outside the city centre, and a lot of the footpaths there, if you take to your legs, you will discover that there are a lot of footpaths that need an incredible amount of work done to them. We do have the issue of tree roots, and I'm not suggesting for a minute we should get rid of them, but I am suggesting there are ways of sort of smoothing the humps and the hollows so that it is easier walking, and there are certainly enormous areas where the work on the paths is pretty horrible. Connected and safe communities. Look, very supportive of the expanded role of libraries, but a bit upset about the term about libraries having been the warehouses of books. I mean, libraries have always been much more than warehouses of books. And I'm mindful of the words of John Milton, who said a long time ago, books are not absolutely dead things, but do contain a potency of life in them, to be as active as that soul was whose progeny they are. I think they are very special words about those very special attributes of our life, which are books. Having also talked about the importance of books, I also want to pay a tribute to the movers and shakers who gave us the Central Energy Trust Wild Base Recovery Centre. That is an enormous advantage in Palmerston North. Congratulations to them. And I'm also very supportive of the Council talking about housing initiatives that are warm, safe and accessible for a variety of groups in the city. About being an eco-city, which is goal number 4, I wholeheartedly endorse the value placed on the Manawatu River, respecting and enhancing the Māori of the river, and also congratulations on the developments that has meant the river has become such an important part of our life in the city. It's added a new dimension, I think, and so the bridge, He Ara Kotahi, excuse me, there, that is a most incredible attribute for the city. And finally, I have made a native calls submission and have submitted that separately and presume we talk to you about that at some later stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill. Appreciate that. We certainly got the message on the footpaths and the name. If I could just maybe just briefly comment regarding the Central New Zealand Distribution Hub and that intermodal around rail, road and actually air, the city is actually leading that project. So perhaps we're a little bit remiss of not publicising that as much as we could have in the consultation document. And we're doing that in partnership with Waka Kotahi, NZTA, Kiwi Rail and MDC and other partners.
Well, if I have somehow missed that along the way, my apologies for that, but I'm absolutely delighted to hear what you're saying. Thank you. Great.
Well, thank you both, Jill and Bruce. Appreciate your efforts in putting pen to paper. We will take those submissions and they'll be debated when we do our deliberations. Thank you. Right, we will now go to, we just go back up to 531, and he's been waiting patiently, Andrew Irving. Andrew. Just turn your microphone on there.
Can you hear me? Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Thank you for hearing my submission today. First time I've ever done this. And just felt compelled to make a submission. I've been living here for 10 years now with my partner and little girl. So this first image here, this was from, it was a great article in the Guardian newspaper, the British Guardian, 2 years ago. In this article, it was about the unregulated race to mine materials in space. It outlined how this chap, Martin Elvis, and senior astrophysicist, and Tony Milligan, a philosopher at King's College London, they were, I'm quoting here, they analysed how soon humans might use up the solar system's most accessible resources should mining take off. They found that, continuing with an annual growth rate of 3.5% per year would use up an eighth of the solar system's realistic resources in 400 years. At that point, humanity would only have 60 years to apply the brakes and avoid exhausting the supply completely. I mean, this is a hypothetical example, but I thought it was great. It sort of illustrates how our current way of operating, our wasteful resource use, and especially our addiction to this sort of growth that we've sort of held on to for the last, I suppose, 70 years, if left unchecked, would grow to devour more than our local habitat. So just moving on here. So this made me think of Kate Raworth's work, which many of you might be familiar with, and she's famous for this whole donut economics model. This donut model definitely reflects, I thought, because you talk about it quite a bit in the documents, this big city ambition and ideal that Palmy believes it's up for. It also sort of visualises in an easy-to-get way the various moving parts that make up what she calls a thriving city. It also challenges the old paradigm of thinking that seeks to measure success in terms of GDP, citing that this old growth model isn't sustainable in a world of ecological limits. And sort of, for me as well, like reading the 10-year plan that we produced and going across the various sort of topics that are covered, you couldn't help but make connections between the various areas and see potential for exciting alignments between disparate goals and actions in places. But generally it was hard to sort of figure out how to pull this together and sort of see the sort of unison of all those moving parts. So in this instance, I'm sort of urging the Mayor and councillors, if you get a chance to have a look at her work, but especially if you go online, it's quite easy to find. She's, I think, been employed by Amsterdam, and they've put together, an equivalent of the Palmy 10-year plan, but their version, which are these two here. There's the Amsterdam Circular, city documents, and also that Amsterdam City Donut. And there's some great terminology and diagrams, and it just makes it really accessible, and it's quite exciting. You sort of read it and you feel quite thrilled as as a citizen, or I could imagine for that city if you were being engaged in that way. So I think maybe there's opportunity there to potentially uplift and use where possible to sort of sharpen our Palmy City plan. So if we go to the next image here. Okay. This is in response to the urban design section of the plan. Under this, it's great to see that there's going to be professional support and education will be provided to developers and community where needed. I thought that's a really good idea. I was also just thinking around that, because from my background, I'm out of the sort of museums and art sector. I just thought, I thought there could be real room for different forms of engagement and to allow for more innovative and out-of-the-box solutions to some of the trickier issues the city faces. Maybe external specialist-led public workshops or semi-permanent urban development hub. This could be an all-in-one workshop, presentation, exhibit space that residents can visit and use to stay abreast of new plans and contribute to the city's development. The space wouldn't just be a place to seek information, but also to meet up and hear from interesting speakers on thriving city subjects, but also a strong signal from council, I suppose, and the city at large about how serious and committed we are to incubating and accelerating positive, inclusive change going forward. and that the challenge that is upon us here in the space, using the space will really assist in helping us get our heads around resilience building, social redress, and the necessary climate and other large challenges ahead of us, because I believe the next 10 years are going to be there's going to be some big things we're going to need to address and move forward with. I could imagine the City Hub utilising an existing site, maybe the library ground floor, or spread across to Manawaram Park. Or maybe there is capacity to do a standalone setup for something like this. As in the images above, as you see here in these images, this design should be inclusive and bold, something that sells and represents where we need to go and become as a thriving city. So I can imagine, I've seen there's some great lecture series and stuff that the city's set up, but they're very sort of disparate and sort of homeless in a way, and they're sort of over at the Globe or out and about in other places. But I thought maybe a strong commitment to a place for what the city's doing might be a strong signal to the citizens at large. Okay, this is transport. I think there's some great urban results that have come out of the placemaker program that PNCC runs, but I was keen to ask that this be developed further. At the moment, it seems that for more complicated projects, the community is required to engage council around their ideas and design, but I'm wondering whether more work could be done by council to map out a few more elaborate examples and ways in which local communities could enhance or change their shared environments. In this instance, particularly, the shared suburban streetscape, because it seems the focus is a lot on that sort of urban, what I call it, tactical urbanism. So I'm thinking more about the suburbs, and I really think Palmy is a suburban city. It's not. Under the transport section of the 10-year plan, I'm also keen to see a strong coordination between street design and speed limit bylaws, which I'm sure will occur in a lot of ways, that will work to prioritise things like the redevelopment of what I've sort of seen as I think the technical term is tertiary streets or tertiary side streets throughout the city. So there's a big portion of the city are these sort of smaller through streets which are not used a lot. But the few drivers that do use these roads tend to use them at speed and make them unsafe for kids and community use and unattractive as an active transport route. So I think there's a sort of latent potential there for the use of these roads, and it'd be neat to see clever or efficient ways to maybe transform these, and maybe quite quickly for great benefit for the city. This is moving forward. This is climate change. Again, reading this part of the document, I can see that the city's aiming to make a 25% reduction in CO2 within the next 10 years. I'm not fully sure how that works in terms of the national commitments and what the broad agreements are, but I'm just, from what I know, and I sort of follow it quite closely, I'm not sure if it really matches the urgency at hand. I just wanted to sort of show this image. This is to sort of re-emphasise the job that's ahead of us, one that is about measuring our success with these targets that we're setting, but mainly remembering and ensuring that it's about working as hard as we can to try and stabilise the Earth's climate system. And here in this illustration put together by scientist Stefan, he's a professor, or emeritus professor at Australian National University. I think he's in Sweden and stuff now as well, working in the government there. He's been out to New Zealand a lot. And his colleagues, this is showing how the Earth sits in this sort of stability landscape, and towards the front you can see the Earth's moved over the last 10,000 years towards where we are now, and we're entering into this period they're calling the Anthropocene, this sort of climatic situation that we've created through emissions and other modifications to our environment, and that we potentially sit at this precarious sort of boundary, and in which we, if we don't sort of make sort of strong actions to sort of mitigate the sort of effects that we're inadvertently making, and deliberately in some ways, we could sort of tip over into this hot house Earth scenario. And he says that's in a climate system that is highly stable, so one that we would sort of never return from, and well, probably for tens of thousands of years, I imagine. He's also worth mentioning because he's fairly local and he's been to New Zealand a lot, but I sort of urge you to check out some of his talks online. He was brought out here by, I think it was the Sustainable Business Council, and some other Victoria University brought him out, and he's a great speaker, and he paints a very clear picture and also a very sort of awe-inspiring picture of how how the Earth system at scale works. It's my last. Do I stop there? It's my last one. Do I keep going or?
How much have you got to go? Is this the last slide?
2 minutes. Here's the last one.
Yeah.
This is just the last one. So just thinking that, the 10-year plan has done well to identify that Palmy, the big emitters of CO2 as private transport. But I don't feel convinced that some of the measures put forward match the scale of the problem, that our situation isn't well understood, that Palmy, in terms of its design as a city, especially its road network, has baked into its DNA a culture of driving, with a high level of big box retail that encourages vehicle use and low density sprawled housing and many other car-centric features that are going to make it very difficult for us as a city to change. So I thought it might be worth Council looking at some of the ideas implemented overseas, especially one of these is the Citizens Assembly initiative. I don't know lots about it, but from what I've heard and pieces I've read, I can see it can be a really effective tool and way to gauge and garner support from the public and community on some of the trickier, more hot topic issues that require big change. This type of consultation engagement might be warranted considering the mountain ahead of us. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Well, look, thank you, Andrew. That's very thought-provoking, and we appreciate not only your presentation here today, but also your submission, which we've read fully. So we'll take that on board, and again, will be debated at our deliberations.
Okay,
so I appreciate you coming in. Thank you. Right, councillors, we'll move forward to the next one, 549, which is CLM, and we have Lyndon and Bridget.
Kia ora koutou. So just a little intro. Since 2002, as many of you will know, Community Leisure Management, or CLM as we're often known, has had the privilege of operating the Palmerston North City Council aquatic facilities in partnership with Council. We currently employ over 140 local staff that work across the 3 facilities of Freyberg Community Pool, Splashiest Community Pool and the Lido Aquatic Centre. And we're proud of the working relationship that we've had with Council throughout this time. Our presentation is with regard to an addition to the 10-year plan in relation to Goal 2, and we thank you for the opportunity to speak to the submission. I have supplied some additional notes. Our submission was reasonably brief, and we apologise for that. The information from the supplier we've been working with and the renderings only came through, I think, on the same day as the deadline for submissions. I just would like to introduce Lyndon Noakes. He's the facility manager of the Lido Aquatic Centre. He's worked across the Palmerston North City Council aquatic centres for 23 years, and he's worked for CLM since 2002. He's well known in the community, and he's one of our most experienced facility managers. My name's Bridget Kens. I'm one of the general managers for CLM. I'm Palmy born and raised. I've spent much of my childhood at the Lido Aquatic Centre and Swim Club before moving on to surf lifesaving, where I actually met Lyndon. I took on what I thought was a uni job at Freyberg Community Pool as a lifeguard back in 2003 and never left. So I've worked for CLM since 2003 in various roles across Freyberg Community Pool before moving into a role with the CLM Support Office over 10 years ago. I remain locally based, and part of my current role is to provide support to our team here in the city. Therefore, between Lyndon and myself, we have over 40 years of experience in the industry, and specifically hands-on across the Palmerston North Aquatic Centres. So I guess in summary, we've been around a while and we've certainly seen a thing or two. So I guess what we'll move on to is just the background behind the submission. So available lane space across the city at peak times has been a topic of ongoing conversation over recent years. From our perspective, lane space is not an issue in the summer months when both the indoor 25 metre pool and the outdoor 50 metre pool are both open with 13 lanes in total available. Once the outdoor pool closes in April for the season, the lane availability drops from 13 down to 6. And this is where the challenge of accommodating all of our user groups occurs. So our user groups obviously are casual lane swimmers through to swim clubs and learn to swim and anything else in between. So the 50 metre pool outdoor is closed for 6 months of the year and it remains unused during that time. So in terms of the proposal, as a contractor or a partner to council operating the aquatic facilities, there may be assumptions that within the community that we would automatically be supportive of building additional facilities to address the challenge of lane space, capacity at peak times. But what CLM understands is the significant investment required to do this. We would estimate building a new 25 metre pool complex at $10 million plus. So what we propose is that council considers utilising an existing asset all year round by covering the outdoor 50 metre pool at the Lido. We've investigated some potential options that would be approximately $1.8 million to build a structure with estimated operational costs of $95,000 per year. Those operational costs are additional utilities for heating, water treatment and staffing. So what we'll now go through is some renderings. So the option is significantly cheaper than building an additional facility. So the first image we're going to show is the type of structure we believe is a good potential option. Some of you may have seen this from the Auckland motorway, which covers the Westlake Girls High School. So the next image is an internal view of that, and that particular structure covers a court space. One of the companies that we've engaged with during this investigation of the options completed the work for the Westlake project, and they've also worked to install the structure at the Whakatane Aquatic Centre. The size of the Lido project would be obviously larger in scale, but we feel it's a relevant reference point because it's covering an aquatic centre. So the next slide is an external view of one of the potential options. That's with the sidings down, I guess, when it's in use for winter. The next image is an internal view within that structure of the, I believe it's a 33 1/3 pool that they have. So what we now have is some renderings of options for the Lido. So the first one, as you can see, it covers the embankment area as well as the 50 metre pool, leaves the dive well off to the side out in the open. Next image is an internal view within that structure. So this is an option that's sort of like the Westlake structure that we showed earlier. And then the next slide is an external view of what that rendering would look like. This is similar to the Whakatane structure where this would be in its winter mode, basically with all sidings on and curtains down. Next option is a partially open with the curtains off, but with the sides, and that you can see there's, I guess, a range of options depending on the season of the year. And then the final rendering we have is with the full sides and the curtains removed, which we would call full summer mode, basically. So I guess in terms of the features of this type of option, the structure would have removable sides that would keep the heat in during the winter and allow that to operate all year round. In the summer, the side panels could obviously be removed to allow the natural airflow and light to come through, and the roof structure will remain in place and provide sun protection to our pool users and spectators. We also feel that working within the 50 metre current outdoor facility at the Lido, that there's still some future-proofing options if the proposal were to go ahead. So the outdoor 50 metre pool is 55 years old and it will need some refurbishment at some point in the future, and that's where there's also some potential options. Refurbishment could include looking at the pool depth, including things like a movable floor to accommodate different user groups. We also operate the Rotorua Aquatic Centre, and in partnership with the Rotorua Lakes Council, and they completed refurbishment of the outdoor 50 metre pool earlier this year. It's an open-air facility, operates all year round, but they have the benefit of natural geothermal resources to heat that facility. That refurbishment included the slight extension of the pool to add a bulkhead to that facility. That movable bulkhead means that the pool can be operated as 50 metres, can be moved to the middle and operate as 2 25-metre pools, so you can effectively double the lane space within that same pool in the future. If the pool was covered and you had a movable bulkhead, and splitting that pool would take the available lanes up to 20 lanes at the Lido Aquatic Centre into the future. So we just wanted to highlight that we feel there's still some options there in the future. So in summary, the Lido Aquatic Centre is the facility where we get demand for additional lane space from user groups. The covering the existing 50-metre pool, we feel addresses the immediate demand, whilst also having some future potential for further expansion, and it provides it at a more cost-effective option to the ratepayer. The structure has the flexibility to be altered for the different seasons of the year, offering an indoor environment in the winter and an airy sun-protected environment in the summer. And CLM would consider putting in some seed money to the project if we were able to achieve a win-win. So 1.8 million is the costing associated with the structure, similar to the Whakatane example. This is the costing at the lower end of the estimate for the structure that's more like the Westlake option. The higher end of that estimate would be around 2.2 million. So we thank you again for the opportunity, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Very interesting. Could I just ask about the seed funding or the partnership there? Is that a little bit like the hydro? Is that like the hydro slide? Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, we would see it similar to the hydro slide, where we obviously invested the aquaplay and then got an extension to the contract to allow us some time to get a return on that investment.
Right. Okay. I'll now Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Bridget and Lyndon. Two questions. The first is the comments around splash earth and there being capacity, but that's not resulting in bookings. We've had, and you may have read them, we've had other submissions, quite a few submissions around aquatic facilities, and several of them talk about groups who are going over to Martin or Wellington or other facilities to utilise. Do you know what the barriers are for them to not book in Ashurst? Understanding it's a different size pool, but still, why those are not bookings are not coming up locally?
Yes, so I guess the swim clubs there are some challenges within the group. Some of the challenges, they don't get along with each other, which creates some barriers and some interesting challenges. There are some that have been kicked out of facilities, which may mean they need to travel and have found their final place at the Lido. It's not through lack of trying for us to get them to go to the likes of Splash Earth. We've just kind of had the refusal and preference to stick with the Lido and be, I guess, more central.
So that's the historical personality issues and things that have been out there for a while.
Yeah, there's definitely a range. And I guess in some ways, we're not necessarily always seeing an increase in club swimmers, but we're seeing divides within clubs and clubs multiplying.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. And look, I understand we're hosting the New Zealand Aquatic Conference as well. Is that right, this year?
Yes, the Waves Conference in August.
Fantastic. Oh, look, we thank you for your submission and the renderings as well. It's very interesting. So, again, like the other submissions, everything will be debated and taken into the deliberations, and we appreciate you going to some effort for this. Thank you. Right, councillors, we're going to break in a moment, but we'll take our last one of this submission of this session, and Joan Spencer, who's been waiting patiently, and that's submission number 669. Welcome, Joan. I won't explain how it all goes because you've been watching all the others.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding my application on plans for the Lido. With me tonight is Renee Dunbar. and Lyndon's up there to help answer any questions. I've also asked Renee to give a brief outline of her vision for the Legends Group, which is my main focus. But briefly, overall, I'd like to see the development of a plan and business case for the Lido for the near future, and the previous submitters was a really good case. And that urgent consideration be given to building purpose-built exercise rooms for gym members, including the Legends Group, and also useful for other community groups. Firstly, I want to draw your attention to the latest edition of Palmy Proud. On page 7, there is an article entitled "A Future So Bright" on the Deputy Mayor's meeting with Year 2 school kids and their questions. Good fun. One stood out to me. A bright young student, perhaps a future mayor, asked, "What will the Lido look like?" The Deputy Mayor was talking to children probably aged between 5 and 7. I have grandchildren of this age, and presently the Lido does not have indoor and outdoor swimming facilities of a depth that safely allows them to play and swim. I go into the pool with them to ensure they are safe, as they are often playing alongside older, boisterous kids. I have also heard from an ex-teacher that it became unsafe to bring the younger children to the Lido when the sloping floor of the outside pool was changed. The lifeguards have also had to rescue some of these kids. I understand that plans for altering the indoor facility to address some of these issues have been prepared, and they included an indoor playground area in connection to the Learn to Swim pool, which presently is not available for the public general use. In addition to the areas already noted in my submission, it would be great to have pool areas suitable for 4 to 8-year-olds, changes made that allow easy access to pools for disabled people. More and more of these people are using this pool. Indoor play equipment and development of slides that enter the indoor complex for all ages to enable use throughout the whole year. Against saving our planet, the Lido creating its own energy for heating and having water collection. A barbecue area where tea can be cooked while the kids are enjoying their swim. I am pleased to see the wide-ranging number of submissions from others supporting better aqua facilities, particularly the 50-metre pool. Funding is always the elephant in the room, and I have touched on this in my submission. Perhaps naming rights for businesses for the Lido and or for the various swimming pools could be considered. Secondly, there is need for exercise rooms to be built as part of the gym. Space is severely limiting for the staff who run this gym. That they manage to be innovative and do this, while at the same time being welcoming to all of us, is a credit to them. However, to cater for the growing number and those with disabilities, it is important to have larger, more suitable gym areas. Although it is especially important to have walking and biking tracks, and Palmy is really well served by these, they can be solitary or family pursuits. Today, where people young and old can become isolated and lonely, for mental health it is important to promote and facilitate community activities. The Lido Gym is an example where both activity and community has been fostered and enjoyed. It is also why I support the continued need to provide excellent facilities for team and group sports and clubs. I am a very enthusiastic member of the Legends Group. As well as benefits of target exercises and well-being, the social opportunities make us grow in understanding and appreciation of our fellow members. Now I am retired to get up in the morning and be able to go to a facility where one is welcomed by friendly reception staff, walk past an aqua aerobics class, then the toddlers learning to swim, to find out where we are exercising is great. It is inspirational to me to see people with disabilities showing the way to participate and enjoy life. Excuse me. In the past week or so, I have enjoyed Eid Ramadan celebration, had several cups of coffee and discussions, spoken with young lads, boxing lads, regarding the sauna and been invited to join them. And tomorrow we are having a shared lunch. And that's just the social side. I've also attended strength and balance, circuit, Qigong, spin biking and aqua aerobic classes where we sing and laugh, I can assure you. I will now ask Renee to say a few words on her vision for this group and the benefit and outcome she's looking for.
So for our Legends group, we aim to have it for like 50s and over because we noticed that in our facility that you came in, you had a few elderly people that they'd come in and they would just work out by themselves and then go. And it started off with just maybe about 20 members originally, just doing a little bit of a strength and balance class, a little bit of a circuits class, and it's grown to over 120 members now, and it's still expanding out. We're at nearly full capacity of it. It's basically turned into a bit of a full-time job with the amount of classes going in. So we've become now an ACC accredited strength and balance classes. We've just expanded our circuits classes, and just this week we've also added another class on a weekend just to expand out for those members that are still currently working. Just to fit in time with that, we've expanded out to a Qigong class where we have one of our members that can instruct it, and that's become to the point it's really popular. We've been very fortunate that we've been able to use one of our clubroom facilities, but even now we find that during school holidays we have to move out to the side. In summer it's great because we can go outside, but where we were originally now has been turned into the new Esplanade entranceway. So we've had to move out a little bit onto that side, but it is getting to the point where it's a little bit harder for us now to try and find the facility to accommodate. So having another gym room will be quite good, so we can kind of expand out into that. So again, like we can have about 20, at most 25 people in the class. I'm now getting to the point where it's becoming 25 to 30 for some of the classes. And we've also started expanding out too to some of the people with disabilities, just because they'd like to feel a little bit part of the community. And we've been looking at how much that they're physically improved, not just like physically, but also how they are starting to become social, become a bit more socially active and involved in the community as well. And like Joan said, a lot of our Legends members, especially after what happened with COVID last year, a lot of them with families being in other countries were quite isolated, didn't really get to see a lot of people, especially being in lockdown, were sometimes at home alone for 4 to 6 weeks, and if not a little bit longer. Coming back into the Legends class, it's just grown immensely. They've formed their own communities, and not just within the Legends community, we've also expanded out to different areas of people. We have a powerhouse facility over across the other town, so a lot of that is where we do a lot of a bit more group fitness, CrossFit style stuff. We've had members step outside their comfort zone and go not only try a couple of little different classes there, but have also gone in that social side to support other members as well, and they've started to expand into that area and connect into that social circle as well. But also with some of our younger members that have not necessarily, have made some bad choices in life, starting to make good choices, they're kind of bringing them in and kind of making them feel welcome and doing it. It's great to see how it's expanding out a lot more. But I'd like to see it expand out. We're currently looking at expanding out to Freiburg starting of next month, just to see what we can do over in that side of the facility and then hopefully expand out further. But that's where it would be good to have like the extra room just to kind of be able to grow further and have more classes available without having to worry about being poolside or try and find a place outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. And look, I'll open up for questions. Councillor Harpiter. Oh, okay. Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation, Joan. I'm over here. It's all right. Joan, the classes that you go to, do you pay for them as part of your, do you use all the facilities, or do you have to pay extra for the gym classes?
In my original submission, I said that where this is different from a normal gym, it's the number of facilities we can go to, and it's used a lot for green prescription. A lot of us, as we get older, we all have disabilities of some description. A lot of us played a lot of sport. We've got knees that are wearing out, and et cetera, et cetera. And so we can use the pools. We can, and Renee, part of her job, which is quite difficult when she's working beside a pool or in a small room, she has to deal with each person separately. And I'd love you to come and see sometimes these people that have walkers in front of them, but yet still do the same things that we try to do. And also I know when I was discussing this with people, the possibility of a pool at some stage there that can help rehabilitate people. It's just, and it's not it's for residents, great visitor participation. When I was talking to my daughter and telling her about this, her first reaction was, yes, Mum, you need something for young kids, because she has the problem of having to get in with the kids. Have I strayed off the question?
No, that's fine, thank
Sorry.
you. No, it's fine.
Great. That is all the questions. So look, thank you both, and thank you especially, Joan, for the submission. It will be debated when we deliberate on all the 700 plus submissions.
Thank you.
So thank you, people. We will just adjourn till for 10 minutes to have a quick coffee. And we will be back in the chamber. Look, we'll make it 15. We'll be back in the chamber here at 20 past 3. For members of the public, if they, there's some cups of tea and coffee out there if you'd like some. Thank you. Kia ora everybody, welcome back. Just moving everybody into their seats. Right, we are now back to submission 634 and invite Patricia Carson-Swanston up, and welcome.
Thank you. I am a cyclist. It's my main mode of travel. And recently a friend was quite agitated because a child had been run over. And she asked if I could make a submission. Well, I'm afraid I made it about sort of like 20 minutes past 5, just before it closed, at 5:30. So, I mean, I thank the council staff that sort of patiently sort of took it down. But my main desire to express anything on the council 10-year plan was that the roads continue to be improved for those who use cycles tracks or those who have other methods of travel besides a motorised vehicle. I appreciate the fact that some of the attempts to make the roads safer for cyclists and other road users have been clearly illustrated by the road markings. And I think the road markings, although they're very controversial on Pioneer Highway, certainly couldn't escape anyone's interest. Or if they did, they shouldn't be driving a car. But I would like to see that on roads like Botanical Road, where you get heavy vehicles, including trucks and military vehicles, that there are areas where there is signage saying to slow down. I appreciate there are some pedestrian crossings on Botanical Road near schools, and I appreciate there are pedestrian crossings on Featherston Street, which is particularly busy and not always cyclist friendly. But I would hope within the scope of the 10-year plan that more thought gets given to factors like climate change and the need, although it is hard for some to sort of realise that our carbon emissions have to go down. I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Patricia. I've got a question for you, and it's still transport related, but you made a comment about public transport here. Am I getting that you are dissatisfied with the regional council or a bit confused who's running the buses, or you're saying the city should do it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I feel that if one wishes to make an approach to a regional councillor, sometimes it's not always as easy as approaching someone on the Palmerston North City Council. Now, I mean, there have been issues for years of not being enough buses, but a regional councillor that I did speak to recently said, well, not enough people were using them, so why provide? But I think and I suppose I am saying something that is liable to be attacked, but I think people are becoming more aware of the importance of buses and the need sort of to regard the cutting down of carbon emissions, and therefore bus use would be preferable, in my mind, if it was run by the Palmerston North City Council rather than the regional council. But that's just a personal opinion.
Okay, thank you. A couple of other councillors like to ask questions. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Patricia, for coming in. I just wanted to ask you more about the comments you made around Highbury Avenue. and safety and speeding vehicles. Can you just tell me what your experience in that street has been, or what your thoughts are about what we should be doing there?
Highbury Avenue, as you all would probably know, is a narrow road, when especially if you have large vehicles, cyclists and pedestrians. I would like to see more signage on Highbury Avenue, because it is an area that I think deserves our attention. We have many young people that are using that road, and many of them are vulnerable to those who would speed. I think providing enough signs to alert people who are speeding that it is illegal is one way I can see is possibly of cutting down their speeding.
So you said you were inspired to put in a submission by a friend who'd had a child in an accident, was it? Was that on Highbury Avenue?
It was recently, and I cannot give details, but I know that the friend was very, very upset about it and felt it shouldn't have happened. A child should not have been struck by a speeding driver, and the road should be perhaps better managed. I think that was the sort of, and I know her own children, and I suppose they were thinking of those children that she has sort of being sort of vulnerable on the Highbury Avenue, for example, did inspire me to come here and talk about it.
Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Patricia, just over here. Really appreciate you sharing with us today, and the, I guess, unique perspective you bring as a regular bike rider around the city. And just wondered if you could tell us a bit more, I suppose, basically, in terms of your, how long you've been riding in the city, and if you have any views around some of the better places to ride in the city and why.
Okay, I have been here since the beginning of the 1980s. I was given a fairly elderly bike by a relative, and I learnt to use it mainly on Ruahine Street, which was challenging, but I'm very glad, in retrospect, that Ruahine Street is a little safer than what it was when I learned to ride a bike on it. I also frequently use Featherston Street, because I live sort of not far from the end of it, and not far from the end of Botanical Road. And the amount of motorists who sort of do not really take notice of someone on a cycle. I mean, the markings are there on the road, and I appreciate that, but they will still try to sort of cut corners and cut across you just as you're sort of going up to an intersection. It's something that I'm very grateful for the person that sort of installed a second-hand bell on my bicycle. It still works, but enabling me to feel that I'm a little bit safer because it makes some sort of a noise. So I think my experience sort of in some streets, like at the moment Rangatiki Street, is wide, and there are vehicles sort of coming into town in a hurry from the Rangatiki Bridge end that will try and cut in front of you. But I'm glad that the cycle paths are marked. I would like to see the cycle paths, though, more clearly identified on Featherston Street, and I don't know if it's possible to sort of trim back some of the trees that sort of shade Featherston Street, but it's just a thought about visibility and safety. So I think, does that answer your question, Councillor Barrett?
That was all very helpful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Patricia. That's done our questions, so appreciate you putting in the the submission on behalf of yourself and your friend, and again will be taken into debate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we now go to number 631, Ian Curry. Ian.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Deputy Mayor and councillors hear me today. Just a little bit about myself. I was born in Palmerston in 1964. Went to College Street School and intermediate and boys high. Now run Denver stock feeds on Tremaine Avenue. So I've watched Palmerston grow for 56, been here for 56 years. And my simple submission today, hopefully won't take too much of your time, but it's just the transport is what I just felt I reinforced to the council team here. In the 10-year plan, I had a little bit of a look into it, and there seems to be quite an emphasis on using public transport, using bicycles, and as a city, I think I can see where you're coming from, that you're worried about your carbon emissions. But I would think within 10 years, 20 years at the most of us will be in electric cars by then. And this idea of carbon emission from vehicles would have gone. And as you all know, electric vehicle takes up the same amount of space on a road as a petrol vehicle. So that's what I do see that you're in your ring road setup that you're working towards is probably what I'm going to just reinforce as some things that you're actually doing already. But I do feel that the city needs 2 new bridges. As I think in some of your reports, it's at Linton Walker Road, which is good for the Army. I would think that the central government should pay towards that. Defence would be beneficial for the Defence Department in view of getting vehicles to State Highway 1 quicker than driving through Palmerston North. And so I would think that the government has got some responsibility towards paying for that bridge. The other bridge, as previous submissions have mentioned, is Stony Creek Road out to Cowtree area somewhere. I realise that will involve having to buy some farmland to get a road connected right through to the Cowtree Road. But as the city grows from Fitzherbert towards the Cowtree and likewise from the city towards Ashurst, we need to get cars out of going right through the middle of the city to get to Massey and that area of town. I just wrote a little bit down here. Tremaine Avenue at present is overloaded. I don't know what you've got in mind, transport team, Brent and Bruno and Leone, what you've got in mind about Tremaine Avenue. As I'd say, I'm between Milson Line and Railway Road, and traffic back up both ways from those traffic lights to we're closer to Milson Line, but we get traffic all the way from the Gold service station. I would think you could 4-lane that, remove all the cars from parking on the side of the road, put the bikes on the footpath, 4-lane the Tremaine Avenue through to Rangitikei Street. Another thought might be of interest, I'm not sure, with the Kiwi Rail moving out to Railway Road, whether there's the possibility of putting a road down the railway line when that area, I don't know what Kiwi Rail wants to do with surplus land they're going to have down there, but that could be an option to look at from Rangitikei Street to Railway Road. What I find just up in that area of town, that there's a lot of traffic that comes in Milson Line and Railway Road to get to town or get to Massey or wherever, and they all seem to be pretty much funnelling towards Ruahine Street. Even traffic coming in Railway Road, if they to carry on down Vogel Street and get into Main Street is difficult. You can obviously, you noticeably see that people avoid that intersection, and so they go down Tremaine Avenue or go down Featherston Street, and then they all get into Ruahine Street. And so that would be something that the council could look at, is to improve that intersection. And then I just wrote at the end here, Fielding Road, and as Fielding grows as a city, as we grow as a city, there'll be a lot more movement between the two cities, and I would have thought you should plan for a 4-lane road to Fielding and to link in with a new proposed ring road and down to Ashurst, obviously, and the road over the new road over the hill. Anyway, that's about all I've got to say, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Harpiter.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Ian. I like some of your ideas. One of them was around trying to get more people out of cars. So a way in which to do that is to get more people onto buses. How do you think we can do that?
Yeah, I wouldn't use a bus. It's to wait for a bus and to go to Palmerston's not that big a place. You want to get to where you're going to. Time's short. We haven't got time to ride bikes and sit on buses. And no, I honestly wouldn't know how you're going to get people like me on a bus.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Ian. Appreciate your thoughts and your lived experience there, and seeing Tremaine Ave every day. Did want to just, I guess, ask, because quite a bit of your, I guess, response around the active transport, the getting people on bikes, and that was around the emissions side of it, and that's certainly part of the rationale. But there's pretty good evidence there around health benefits, social benefits, et cetera, of people actually getting out and having active lifestyles. And just, guess wanted to understand what sort of weight you thought we should put on that side of the rationale around active transport, even if we accept that perhaps there'll be a transition to electric and hydrogen for the vehicles.
So you're thinking of the health area, riding bikes, obviously. My wife and I live by Winchester School at the bottom of Ruahine Street, so we're quite close to the river track or bridle track or whatever it's called. And yeah, you do see a lot of people riding bikes there, and I don't know, I suppose if you, as a council, made more areas like that off the road for people to ride bikes, that would be beneficial for those that want to enjoy our weather.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Ian.
Yep.
That's exhausted the questions. We acknowledge your submission, and again, as the others, it'll be debated in the deliberations, and appreciate you taking the time. Thank you. Right, Mary Ann Meachin, submission 565.
Push. Okay. Rightio. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start off with a mea culpa. I forgot that it was submission time, and I was out at the Waitariri Beach, actually, babysitting grandchildren, and oh my God. And so on my cell phone, I thought, well, I can do one online. Not very good with my phone. I get myself into trouble with my phone, actually. But I thought, okay, I'll start. And so up it came. So I started filling in, and then a stream of consciousness. I'd been with oldies on Friday in College Street, and away I went. And then I thought, oh God, I haven't got time to finish this. And so I abandoned it. I abandoned it thinking that it wasn't sent actually, and you got it. So I thought, oh my God, okay, so I have to come along and explain myself and just tell you where that was coming from, because I go around the place singing your praises, and Jill White mentioned the river earlier, and I thought, yes, we turned our back on that river for so many years, and now everyone's embracing it, and that's all been decisions around this table and others, and so there's so much to pat yourselves on the back for. You're doing a wonderful job, actually. And I also, with the arts, we do live up to this reputation now. We are a vibrant art centre, and again, it's to do with decisions that are made around a table, and so things just don't happen on their own. So, well done, well done. So I think that, I guess what I'm on about here is that I think there are unforeseen outcomes of some of initiatives, unforeseen consequences, and so I guess that's what I'm talking about. And I wouldn't be being true to the people who I deal a lot with if I wasn't coming here and saying some of these things to you today. So I'll get on with it. So my submission comes from a personal experience with direct involvement of an age demographic of around 70s, 80s and 90s. I've actually got 3 people who are in their hundreds, and two of them are 102, and one of them is 101. So, and I was with one of them yesterday, and she was telling me that she really does like to go around the supermarket herself. She needs help to get there, but she likes to browse and see what's, if someone's with her, they hurry her a bit. So there's some amazing people out there, and they'll continue to be amazing with just a little bit of help from us. So I've worked personally with this community, my involvement spanning 30 years. I interface often with the carers who support this demographic, bringing essential services to them in their homes. So let's just zoom in, shall we? Let's zoom into College Street. It's an already narrow street with a long stretch of non-stop yellow lines inside a marked cycleway. I'm wearing my yellow shoes. So what is the experience of this council initiative? I'll tell you what I know. Okay, I do know that there was an enormous amount of consultation that went on there. So it's not like people weren't talked to. I don't know how many carers were spoken to, but I do know that the residents of College Street, it was worked over. Okay. So I'm aware that this demographic that I am talking about in general, and some of them are in College Street, but they're all across the city. They don't like making too much of a fuss. They don't want to be a burden, and they mostly want to do the right thing. And they come from largely a culture of nurturers. Well, it is a culture of nurturers, actually. And it's the demographic that remembers a time when nurturing was paramount. They aren't from a generation of stressed double-income families being any sort of norm. And in fact, this generation has had to step in and support the parenting of grandchildren. And their output, may be diminished over the years, but their contribution to our Palmerston North communities has been significant, and those that are able are still continuing to, those who are able-bodied, they are still continuing to play an enormous contribution to our volunteer sector. And of course, I'm fast moving into this demographic myself, actually, and a lot of these carers that I'm talking about are in the demographic as well. But these are the people, honestly, they want to do the right thing. They're the natural recyclers, and they've been doing it long before the council was helping them to do it. So they will support the youth. They'll support cycle lanes. They support healthy activities. And they like to participate. They'd like to actually participate in more of them themselves. So these carers, the carers, they come from all across the city. And there are others alongside the carers. I guess I'm included in that, who will be part of this demographic support network.
The carers' work, as you will know, it's crucial in our city and across New Zealand, Aotearoa. The system of supporting people in their homes is well established, and it depends on carers showing up at assigned times of the day and evening, 24/7. And despite the essential nature of this, they are low paid without the conditions of work benefits that similar occupations carry. And they're often overworked, and some of them work for agencies, some of them work for themselves. They're self-employed, but they need a vehicle to travel to the different locations of their clients. And the nature of it is that they're dropping in. They're dropping in for 20 minutes to give someone a shower, or to sort out someone's meds, or to get them ready, to get them dressed. Then they come back again in the evening. And they're not just seeing one client. I mean, they're doing that across the city. So this is how I interface with them. So I'm just very aware that that is a stressful job, and you'd rather be spending 5 extra minutes with your client than running around the streets or driving around the streets trying to look for a park. And what really upset me in College Street was I thought, God, if you actually did park here, you could get a $60 fine. And I'm thinking, I mean, is the carer's job truly paid enough to support like this extra stress of the job anyway, to be looking at the idea that for them just carrying out their job, you can get a fine. So this sounds a bit pedantic, but I thought it was a really good example of how, you know, we've got big city ambition, and that's good, but the small city benefits of that, decisions haven't really been grounded in actual community awareness and participation. And I understand. I mean, people here know my politics. I mean, I know how we all need to be on board for the changes that we need to make for a sustainable future. But I do also believe that you can't expect the goodwill or doing the right thing courtesy of a vulnerable generation and a workforce that they depend on. The experience of those broken yellow lines is actually contrary to the safety intent of such road markings, I believe. It actually means a barrier, or in its worst case scenario, it can actually mean a barrier to essential services and support to an often lonely and forgotten sector, if it's just family or a support person just wanting to pop in and say hi. I know I don't stop. I don't have time. I think, oh God, I've got to find a park. And I mean, it's a luxury that I guess we enjoy here. We enjoy in Palmerston North, but it is supposed to be part of the small city benefits. So I just feel we you know, it's all very well able-bodied people can take to their bicycles, and particularly people who it's a wellness thing. If you're sitting in front of your computer all day, yeah, it'd be good for you to get out on your bike, you know, and take to the streets. But, you know, this isn't everyone. I think please don't exclude the elderly by consigning them to a life behind broken yellow lines, deterring their visitors and frustrating their carers, who are living in fear of parking fines. It's a real fear. And not just that, recrimination, because there's people watching you, and it's not, you know, it's not that the carers have cars that have that clear visibility of who they are. They're not the district health nurses, you know. They're unmarked cars. Their cars look a bit like mine, you know, a few dings, and sometimes a bit dirty, you know, if they haven't had a carriage to sit in. So, yes, in an extension of this, I just thought of what was, you know, they say to me that they can't get to their favourite shop. Now, since Whitcole's since Whitcole's demise, they Paper Plus is the store of their choosing. They love Paper Plus. And I don't know how many times they've told me how they couldn't get to Paper Plus. They were too scared to park when they did get close to it because they thought they wouldn't get out. And then, so they waited for their niece to come in town, so they took them into town, and it was even worse. And so I just think that the cityscape, our wonderful cityscape, I know that's a pedestrian spot that you know, with the area that, again, I'm thinking, okay, so maybe this has got unintended consequences here. Every time we lose a car park in the square, I think that's a restrictive access to one of my oldies. That's the filter. That's my filter. And I know that there's a problem with cars. Yes, we've got too many of them. But I do think we need to challenge, we all need to think again, we need to be challenged on this. And we don't actually have the population to support a sustainable bus service that is in any way going to limit cars, going to reduce cars. It's not going to happen, not for a while anyway. So pushing people outside of the ring road, you know, to park in the suburbs, who are you targeting? Who's being targeted here? I believe it's the elderly at home who are dependent on their support workers coming to bring them with services. They're actually being targeted. I know a lot of this is, you know, anecdotal and, you know, but this is just my experience. And I feel I need to just share this with you. I want us to be helping everyone to get to a sustainable future, and I want us to look after each other on the way. And I know that you want that too. I have great faith in this council and in this city. I'm born and bred, yeah. So anyway, I'm done. So thank you very much for letting me come and explain myself, yeah.
Thank you, Marianne, as always. Again, your submission is tabled, thank you, and we will debate it in the deliberation. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Good. Right, moving on. Brian Hope. So number 142, submission 142. Brian, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity of making a brief submission. It's fairly definitive. My name is Brian Hope. I'm a resident of Palmerston North, a ratepayer, and I live at Elmira Avenue. So it'll be brief, but basically, in making this submission, I do have some 35 years in the banking industry, majority of that time in the Palmerston North Manawatu area. Also involved with business mentoring and budget advice. This experience, coupled with my concern with the escalating rate increases now proposed, prompted a degree of research to find a more equitable solution to this challenge, particularly given the present government directives in endeavouring to have a more level playing field for all New Zealanders. My proposal in part helps address this disparity, that is, rate increase levy as against the straight percentage rate increase, e.g. the 10-year plan, say, allows for a 20% increase in first 5 years. So I propose the existing total rate would be tabulated by 5, say, or 3 years levy of, say, $200 per rateable household, or whatever the 10-year plan says. So if the 10-year plan says there's going to be 20 million required, I would say $200 levy per annum per each individual household, which is, say, there's 10,000 ratepayers, would be raised $2 million a year. So ratepayers, by doing it this way, can at least plan for a 3 or 5 year tranche, knowing the exact increase to be paid and budget accordingly. This also in part addresses landlords' carte blanche increasing rates, say 20%, to allow for planned increases, i.e. tenants would know the rate levy would be perhaps $200 per annum and puts reported increases in context. This again more aligns with current government policy of creating a more equitable and fairer society. I could give you an example. One resident in Elmira Avenue, the current RV on the property is $1,050,000. The land value is $1 million and the improvements are $50,000. Rates, both for the Palmerston North City Council and Horizons, are $10,000 plus. And the individual pension is net $17,500, and the rates and insurance are taking $15,000 of his pension. His partner is required to work because she's not 65 years of age. And I know a developer is waiting in the wings to pounce and buy because they're going to be forced out. There's no doubt about it. I have another residence. I've personally been to each one in the street. Been in the street 58 years, and the family are paying the rates. Their rates are nearly $7,000 a year, and they're living on net $28,000. So I leave you with those thoughts and suggestions. So basically, a straight levy over the existing rates, and I think that'll be much more palatable. I know in existence, I had a property in Taupo, and we had to have it sewage upgrade. So it was $1,000, and they put a separate levy of $200 each, and it was more acceptable for the people rather than getting dumped with $1,500 or $2,000. And I think the rates, if we set it as an increase over like that, would be much more palatable and easier for people to budget. So I'll leave you with these thoughts and suggestions for your considerations, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brian. Before I go to a councillor who's got a question, your views on capital versus, basically there's two systems which New Zealand councils use, either a capital or a land. What's your view on?
Well, I can give you my instances. My property had an RV previous was of the land was $450,000, and I had discussions with Steve Patterson 18 months ago and Councillor Petrus over here, and they bumped my valuation up last time to $650,000, and it's not worth that. And my rates have gone up to including over $6,000 a year. And my basis is with a levy system, say there's 10,000 ratepayers, everyone's getting a fair proportion, and reflects we all use the same amount of water, basically, sewerage.
Well, there is a uniform charge.
Yes, that's right, so that covers it. So I just threw a more equitable system, that's all.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Brian, for your suggestions, and I'm always encouraged to find that people are looking at the rate system and seeing how it could be done better. So good on you. I wonder if you were familiar, which you may not be, of course, with the poll tax as it was introduced in the UK in the 1990s.
I certainly am a student of history. I'm very aware of them.
So, so you'd be aware then that, you know, it was so unpopular that there were riots and then it was withdrawn. And what you're suggesting here seems to me to have some similarities with that, in that it's a sort of a flat rate per person.
Mind you, we've come a long way since then, and I'm in sympathy with the government. They're trying to, and the recent budget would bring that out, that's trying to make it fairer for everyone. And I'm saying, by my visitation of my street, that the over 65 is over 30%, and they're on fixed incomes, basically the pension, and as I said, a lot of them are paying over 40% of their net income on rates.
Yeah, I mean, there is a rates rebate
I'm
system.
fully aware of that.
Yeah.
And you know the budget, and I know the level, you know, is about $600.
So I guess what I'm asking is, do you think that a flat rate per person is a fairer system? I
do, I think, for everyone, especially a nominal amount, given the 10-year plan, by $200 per ratepayer is going to bring in $2 million per annum, and $200 if you spread it over 50 weeks, you know, we're talking, you know, $4 a week.
Okay, so that's in addition to the
existing
property
rate.
value.
Yeah.
Ah, right, okay. Yeah,
But it's covering the 10-year plan, and it's doing, you know, on a fixed instalment basis. People know what they can budget for, and the lower income people can see that they've got to put $200 over and above.
All right, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying now. Thank you.
You?
All right, thank you. That's the questions done. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you, as Councillor Johnson said, putting some time into seeing how the rates are made up and giving us some suggestions. Thank you. Right, we move now to the Manawatu Tram Trust. Mr O'Brien, number 16 in terms of submissions.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure it's been a long day for you, so brevity will be the secret of my presentation this afternoon. Could I start by asking councillors and the Mayor, for a show of hands, how many of you been on the council for 16 years? No one was there? Good. Oh, Lou, my apologies. Well done. Good on you. So you will perhaps have a recollection that 16 years ago, when the Manawatu Tram Trust was inaugurated, we entered into a partnership with the Palmerston North City Council, and we are very grateful for the support the council has given us in encouraging us to continue with the research and development that has gone on during that over a decade and a half. Can I ask councillors with a show of hands if you know what an all-electric, trackless heritage tram achieves? And I'm grateful, Lorna, for you prompting this. Lou does? Good. And I think that's and Grant does. I think that's a very honest answer, because you won't know all the things that it achieves, and you need to envisage, if I may be so bold as to suggest, an old tram that does all the modern things. Can I also ask you, are you aware that since the tram initiative and all its years of development, how many of the city's ratepayers have completely unsolicited approached us and told us reasons why they support the tram initiative? Would you have a general awareness? Pick a figure. 3, very good. 300, it's over 300, but you picked a figure, well done. So my message to you is, why would randomly, when Janine and all her friends 15 years ago gave this tram initiative a huge amount of publicity, why would over 300 Palmerston ratepayers, with no one asking them, send in their thoughts on the matter? And we found there were two main bodies. One was mothers with children. They loved the idea of parking on the periphery and using the tram to get to the library or to Manawa or the plaza or whatever their route was. The second thing was, we had a huge number of commuters, I'll call them. They're not really commuters, but they park down at Centre Point, or they park elsewhere. It used to be what they called the Foots car park. I don't know what it's called nowadays, but up by the COVID testing centre. And they liked the idea there would be this park and ride. So they were all really quite selfish reasons, whereas the Tram Trust, which had been formed out of very generous corporate citizens, they were really focused on the environment, trying to keep vehicles out of the square, but causing people still to use the square more, and a whole range of other initiatives that came. And as many of you around the room will know, we now have this wonderful business in town that's busy building electric vehicles all over the world, but none in Palmy yet, which is extraordinary, but things take, Rome wasn't built in a day. And the last thing, and I'll just address this to Billy, have you read the tram submissions letter? Thank you, Bill. I'm sure you would have. It's all there. It's succinctly put. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I've got a couple of questions here. Could I just ask, do you think that this initiative could be part of the public bus system?
Oh, undoubtedly, yes. But Manawatu District Council, Palmerston North City Council, Massey University, and a number of other likely users that came out of the woodwork were all very focused on having their own uses for it, and, as I said before, citizens. But yes, there's no reason to say not, because we're not dictating how the asset shall be used. We're just wanting to gift it to the city for the best usage.
I'm aware Hamilton City have some sort of drop-on, drop-off, and also other Australian cities as well. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Paul. From what I can read from your submission, your request today is actually just that this is included in the 10-year plan, or annual budget is the reference, but 10-year plan. So I'm just trying to understand specifically what is to be included, because the vehicle itself is proposed to be gifted to the city, so there's no investment in that. It's the operating costs of some sort. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So have you got I assume you've got a vision in mind on how this could be used and what. It's not something that's just coming out for the Christmas parade once a year, is it?
No, exactly. No, the Tram Trust has already consolidated many, many ideas that the public and Manawatu District Council, City Council, Massey University, Te Manawa, you name it, they've all had a crack at suggesting how it should be used. But we don't want to dictate that. But there has to be in the long-term plan if we're giving an asset to the city. And we're also looking at the council being involved in the research. If the last paragraph of the letter that Billy read, we look to you to support research to ensure that the trust proposals align with the needs for the city and the subsequent inclusion in the annual plan.
So I'm wondering what is the request to put into the budget, though? Are you... do you know what I mean? Because we could put in $2,000, which
I hear what you're
saying,
yes. I would expect it would be in the vicinity of under 10,000 and probably less.
Okay. Thank you. That answers it.
That's good.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Paul. So just along the same lines, and I just really want to sort of crystallise this if we can, is that there is actually no request at this stage for any money. However, the idea is to actually put a placeholder in the 10-year or the long-term plan so that can actually align with all of the other developments, for example, Streets for People and other transport.
Spot on, Pat. Yep.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yep. So I just needed that confirmed.
No, thank you. I'll have the minutes secretary note that. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Paul, and for explaining to me the difference between your tram and a bus, which I now understand. So just, would it just be focused on the CBD? Is that the thinking with this?
No, not at all, because Manawatu District Council, who were keen to participate as part of the wider user group, did see the sort of one Saturday a month that it might be at the Fielding Markets or something like that, or Massey University with their block courses, you know, where there were a lot of visitors coming to town for block courses, and they had identified 6 or 7, I'm going from memory here, a number of times throughout the year when there would be block courses, and they would use that as part of their brand and everything on Sundays, taking people in the motels in Fitzherbert Avenue to the block courses, that type of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
But primarily it would be short term within the CBD is the findings of the trust.
Right.
We're not saying it should be. We're just saying that was the findings. Yeah.
Okay. And would it be free?
Yes. Well, you know, it was very interesting. Lou might know this, but we had This is ridiculous. We had over 400 people wanted to be a volunteer conductor on the tram. We never asked for it. But at the same stage, I was chairing Te Manawa at that stage, and we were driving a lot of volunteers for the Te Manawa complex. And it was, people saw how well that was working, and I think that was, well, I wouldn't mind being an official conductor.
I think if you provided a uniform, you could probably get even
Exactly,
more than that.
exactly, yeah. So, in answer to your question, though, if a donation was offered, it would not be refused, perhaps even encouraged.
Okay, thank you. That's cool.
Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Paul. Paul, just to clarify, once it's vested with the City Council, who controls it?
That would be the council, yes.
Okay, so we could
Unless
decide-
they deemed that some other body would control it, but
No,
that would
that's-
be the council's.
No, that's
Thank
okay.
you, Susan.
Thank you.
Okay. Well done, Mr Tram. So we have extinguished all the questions there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul, and we'll, again, though, that'll go into debate and deliberation, so appreciate putting the effort into that.
Thank you, everyone.
Right. Our last but not least again, Safety Advisory Board, Inspector Ross Grantham. Thank you, Ross, for hanging around. And submission 532. Ross.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia katoa. Mr Mayor and Council, thank you for your opportunity to speak this afternoon. As the Prevention Manager for Manawa 2 and a member of the Palmerston North City Safety Advisory Board, I make the following oral submissions in support of my written submissions representing the Board, and I take it that you've all read them. A continued annual investment of $65,000 will ensure a successful annual Safe City Ambassador program, enhancing the city's reputation as a safe city, an attractive place to live, work and visit. As evidenced last summer, recruiting the right ambassadors enhances the city's vibrancy, maintaining the small city benefits such as hospitality and safety with promotion of our big city ambition. I would ask the Palmerston North City Council not to focus on the idea that the ambassadors are security, as this is not their primary intention. We believe the intention of the ambassadors is to kai kōrero, be storytellers of our community, make the city welcoming, share our culture from Te Maraeo Hani, the courtyard of the Daughter of Peace, our history and ambition radiating through the Central Business District. Our ambassadors link our people, businesses and services together, share the city's stories and create opportunities. Making the city a vibrant and welcoming place brings more people. More friendly people creates a sense of well-being and safety, increasing business opportunities and reducing antisocial behaviour in the central city. We believe the Ambassador program is vital to the city's strategic plan Goal 2, a creative and exciting city, and Goal 3, a connected and safe community. I know the Council have read the evaluation conducted post last year's Ambassadors program, and the Safety Advisory Board would ask that you consider the recommendations as a positive step to meet the city's goals. The recommendations, just as a reminder, are consistent data gathering, ambassadors' diversity and role, business owners and retailer engagement, program preparation and continued funding. The past summer, our ambassadors engaged with 1,970 locals and 1,147 tourists, providing city information on local attractions, events, and encouraged our city visitors to participate and enjoy games at the Unbox. The Safety Advisory Board believed that the standard of the ambassadors is now in a fertile place where it can only grow and better service the city's vibrancy, making it an attractive place to live, work and visit. The Advisory Board further submits that the ambassadors have developed into an asset for the city, and this is evidenced in the independent evaluation. With continued funding and adoption of the recommendations, the program will significantly support goals 2 and 3. Through the ambassadors, we have an opportunity to develop urban best practice in terms of city shaping and progressive and inclusive communities. That's it, thank you.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Ross. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Ross. So just working on your numbers there with about 3,000 engagements last summer and a $65,000 budget, that comes out to about $20 an engagement. I just want to know from the Safety Advisory Board's point of view if $20 an engagement is a price point that represents value for money?
I think there's two ways of looking at it. One is that the program is developing, and last year evidence that it has developed very well. So I would expect that in the next 12 months, providing the funding's made available, that number of interactions would grow, so the value dollar per investment would shrink.
Thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Ross. Just wonder if you could just give us a perspective in terms of the so the number of ambassadors this last year, because we've got some external funding, we're able to stretch that out to so that we could cover 7 days a week. Firstly, and secondly, just if you could comment on perhaps the police's experience in terms of youth in the CBD and the relationship with Unbox and the activities that took place within the CBD, and how that perhaps encouraged pro-social behaviours? So, firstly, the number of ambassadors allowed us to go, yes, for a longer period of time, but also different shifts, so morning and afternoon, which assists with a longer period, obviously, they're deployed. With the youth in the city, it comes back to one of the city's ambitions about everybody being active and engaging those youth and a number of older people with some of the activities in the square itself. When we think about it, the square is an absolute treasure for the city. The way it has been developed by the council itself with the SEPTED, and we need to encourage more people to come into it. The only way we can encourage people to come into it is to make them feel safe, and I think the ambassadors do that very, very well. I can talk of some of our experiences, the police experiences in relation to crime, if that would assist the council. I don't have numbers because they're not official stats, but I can talk about some of the reductions in some of the areas, if that would help. Yep. So it's an unofficial picture, so it's not police data, but it's over the years 2018, 2019, 2019-20, and obviously 2021. There was a reduction in serious violence within this CBD when the ambassadors are working, and whilst the numbers that I were given were only small, any reduction in serious crime is significant, and it's huge. Dishonesty offending, stealing cars and stealing from cars, in 2018-19, 19-20, shows a sizable reduction when the ambassadors are operating. In 2021, we saw a large increase in that sort of crime, but it peaked in November. So we believe that without the ambassadors being there, it would have continued. So the ambassadors had a positive effect on that. Suspicious activity around the city, so that's people ringing in about someone's odd behaviour or looking a bit dodgy, is a bit of a two-string bow for this. Firstly, the ambassadors' presence reduces suspicious activity, which is great. Conversely, their presence actually increases the reporting, so it pushes it up. So we sort of looked at it as good cholesterol. It's a good thing. People are reporting it, people are seeing it, people are doing something about it. It's a good thing for the city. Equally, for solvent and alcohol incidents, more reporting is a good thing, and we had some of that. And lastly, for intentional damage, which of course affects the council at times, graffiti and the like, there was a significant reduction while the ambassadors are working. It's across the crimes.
Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Inspector Ross. About these ambassador engagements with the domestic and external visitors, are these the engagements, person to person, or some electronic or online engagements are also involved? Email exchanges of these things?
No, it's all face-to-face. All these engagements are face-to-face.
And all these are sort of on duty all the times?
Pardon me?
These ambassadors, were they on duty all the times, or they're?
No, there's a specific roster, so the mornings and the afternoons. It's not all the time, but during those times they're out there engaging with the public, and that's the whole purpose of them. We want them out there talking to members of the public and telling them stories about our city and linking them up with our city.
Thank you.
Ross, just some of the questions that were coming through and just asking sort of the value of things, and some people will rate this highly and some won't. But could the ambassador program, it sounds like it has starting to get some traction, could it have partners so it's just not ratepayer funded, i.e. the bid? I think you got some MB funding last time. I don't know how good that'll last, if it does. But is it possible to have some other funders?
I think anything the council does with a bit of imagination, we could fund it in different ways. It would be to find the right partners and with the same philosophies and commitment that we want. Yes.
Right. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Ross. I wonder if, have you talked to the Palmy Bed about whether or not they will be prepared to fund something like this? Because, the business improvement district that's just getting going in the CBD?
Yes, I'm aware of the bid. No, we have not at this time.
Because I feel like that this is an initiative that they would benefit from, and so that they might have an interest in being a partner in it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Just wondered if they had been contacted.
Great. All right. We are done. Thank you very much, Ross.
Thank you very much.
It's been 2 long sessions. Thank you, everybody. I'll now adjourn the meeting and we'll pass it through.